again.
Lovely to be here.
Hey, there it is.
There he is. There
Come
he is.
on.
It's a pleasure to have you here, mate. I remember when we were talking about starting up this podcast, one of the first guests that we mentioned we wanted to have was yours truly. So if you want to say a little
Yeah, well, it's an honour and pleasure, naturally, to be here. My name is Jamie. So all those who were not aware, now you are aware. Know my name, respect my goddamn name. You know how it is. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this for a good couple of months now. Just chatting some films with the best of them, with the big shots in film podcasting. Yeah. It's exciting stuff.
I'm glad you recognise the huge names we've become.
Real recognise real, baby.
Jimbles King.
To those who may not know him,
yeah.
Jimbles.
Yes,
what have you come here today to talk about, mate?
I've come here today under the assumption that we're talking about animated films.
Correct.
We're talking about animation, and I'm excited for it.
A podcast I'm very excited for personally.
It's going to be exciting.
Big fan of animation.
This is the
films.
first category Jack suggested, I think.
Yeah.
Really?
When we were talking about it, was one that came up that I would have liked a full episode to talk on.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm excited it's come about.
It's because, we'll get into this in more depth later, but I assume one of the things I think is so exciting about animation is the breadth of stuff that you can do with it. You're not constrained by what an actor or a stuntman at the peaks of things can do.
Here he goes.
You can just do whatever the fuck you want. It's fantastic.
Mate, it's true.
And so,
Analysis
the breadth
right
of
off the
stuff,
bat.
the breadth of stuff you can do is fantastic, and hence why it's so exciting for you clearly, and also something near and dear to me.
For all of us here, I think.
I cannot wait for Jamie to sink his teeth into some film analysis.
No, of course.
But
he's the man for the job, mate. The vocabulary.
I've got to actually pop out of the studio a sec. I realised I left my glass of water in the kitchen.
Oh, no worries.
And these Bakewells will...
Don't worry, we'll guard the Bakewells, mate.
I might get
a bit clammy in the mouth.
I might get a bit parched if I... I bought some fuel for this one. This is going to be a heavy session, guys.
Bought out the store, mate. Bought out the store with Mr. Kipling.
Excuse me, what?
No worries.
Discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah, we could... bit of small talk to fill the time.
Yeah, a bit of small talk. I suppose if we're going to small talk, we might as well small talk animation. So
yeah, we could mention what we just watched as a way into the podcast. Because we've been liking to, prior to doing a podcast, watching a film that's relevant to the topic we're about to talk about. And so today, animation-wise, we went for a film, sort of, I think Josh was the one who actually suggested that, kind of like a group discussion, and then came to a film that we'd all be very happy to watch, all a film that we like. One I hadn't seen in a while. You said you'd seen it
fairly recently.
Yeah.
That film obviously being Ratatouille.
Ratatouille.
Sorry about the ASMR sounds of the Bakewells getting opened.
Yeah. The Bakewells are... The Bakewells are on the way.
No,
I'm alright.
Come on,
mate. No, I'm alright for now.
I'm honestly
you enjoy
okay.
it.
You enjoy. You walked all the way to Sainsbury's for it.
You weren't going to give him.
That is the correct answer.
You weren't going to give him up that.
But Ratatouille, fantastic film. I mean, kind of re-cemented in my head. Obviously, watched it not that long ago.
Yeah.
I feel like it was quite nice as a means of refocusing myself on the things that are particularly great about animation. The things that animation can do very well. And Ratatouille, so I'm sure it will pop up in conversation again later, and we can talk about it.
That is exactly the plan, mate.
But it's given me some good insights maybe on other films and how those other films work with their animation. Definitely. I'm excited to dig into that.
Let's get straight into it.
Yeah,
Jamie.
So how we're thinking of structuring is we'll go. So we did a top 5 comedies. We'll do a similar thing with top 5 animated.
Fantastic.
So we'll kick off with yourself as the guest. I think it's only right.
Honour.
We'll go your 5th, and then we'll just go clockwise. So we'll go Jevons, then on to me, and then back round like that.
Fantastic.
I don't know if you already mentioned, but we might have some honourable mentions and stuff.
Oh, I think there'll be honourable mentions, and also it's worth saying now, if there are overlaps, which I think there might be, we can either, when it initially comes up in conversation, because obviously someone's 5th pick might be someone's higher up. So if that person who's higher up wants to save the bulk of the discussion for don't mind this guy. Just eating his Bakewell.
He's choking. He's on a Bakewell. He's choking on a Bakewell.
Help!
Wait, what the hell are we talking about? I got distracted by this.
The order of play.
Oh, of course. So if someone's pick that's higher up the list appears earlier and they want to save the discussion for later, then we can kind of brush over it on the earlier pick. And then go into more detail later when it's that. Because I think that's fair.
I think that works.
What you want to talk about. Well, let's get into it then, mate. So,
Jamie,
you want to kick off?
You're roaring.
You're number 5.
Go,
number 5 on the list.
On the tip of your tongue
on the list.
My number 5, and I was hesitant almost to put this as my number 5 for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's probably a film that's less well known than the other on my list, and because I haven't watched it for a long time, and my memory is very fuzzy of this film. But I'll do my best to do it justice in conversation here. The film is Summer Wars, and it's an anime film. It's 2009, I believe, if I remember correctly. But yeah, pull up some stills.
Pictures, because I've never seen it. I'd be interested to see the animation.
So it's called Summer Wars, and the premise, the things I think I watched this maybe 5 years ago. Might have been the last time I watched it, and I remember the feeling of watching it fantastically well. Which I think speaks volumes to the quality of the film.
An anime film.
Yeah, it's anime, and it's not Studio Ghibli, and we'll talk a bit more about Studio Ghibli later. It's not Studio Ghibli.
There it is. The first name drop of the
It's produced by Madhouse, and I can't remember who else, but a couple of teams together. And Summer Wars, the thing that I remember really distinctly about it is it's a 2009 film, and the premise, I won't sort of go into much detail, partially because I can't remember a huge amount, but
that's it, right.
But it focuses around the interactions between this guy and the main protagonist is some sort of programmer type, and he has a love interest, and her family are sort of very relevant, tied into the story.
I'm hooked.
But he has sort of a foothold in this virtual world. This is sort of a social media virtual world. This is 2009 film.
Ahead of its time.
Honestly, thinking back on the plot now, incredibly so. Like so much more than I would have realised even 5 years ago. Watching this film, it's more relevant now.
Was Second Life a thing back then?
I'm not sure what you mean by Second Life.
Oh, come on! I never had an account. I was just
I don't think I know what that is either.
It was like this really old virtual life thing that people used to have.
Explain.
Like The Sims or something.
Yeah, but you actually had a character.
I imagine very similar to that. Yeah, I imagine very similar
like that. But 2009.
Yes, that looks like The Sims.
Honestly, very similar.
No, but it's like The Sims, but you don't control a family. You it's not relevant.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
So it focuses around the interaction between the real world and this guy and this virtual world. Like the pertinence of that today, I think it resonates fantastically well. But the thing that I remember most vividly is the character dynamics are beautiful. Like the relationships are very real, very grounded. Which is an impressive achievement given it was trying to be very ahead of its time in this social media world, and it builds that into the narrative so well.
Do you remember any particular relationships in the film that stood out to you?
Yeah, so the main character is this guy, and it's a friend of his who he goes to stay with her family. She has to say that this is her boyfriend to make it sort of an acceptable kind of visiting stuff like that.
Japan?
Yes, set in Japan, and the family dynamics, like the relationship between sort of the matriarch of the family, grandma
brilliant.
Character, who's fantastic, and the sort of that female lead herself, sort of the female of the couple, she's a great character. Like a lot of those relationships are fantastic, and as is the way of a lot of anime, the animation itself is stunning. Particularly when they enter this virtual world, it's animated beautifully. It's sort of white background, very clean. And very digital. It feels incredibly digital, but it's all hand drawn, and it's a very impressive feat.
Is that kind of what we're looking at? This screen grab?
Yeah. So we've got up on the screen now for the listeners. This screen grab, and it's incredibly clean.
It's really different from normal movies.
With very neat kind of sort of glowing kind of outlines to the figures and characters, and it's a stunning film. It's a stunning film.
You always I'd recommend if anybody's interested, googling Summer Wars if you want to have a look at what we're looking at. But it's just you always forget the imagination some people have, and as well as the artistic talent to actually bring this stuff to life. But my God, that came from someone's head. Look at that.
Yes, it's incredible. Mate. It's a wonderful film. I highly recommend it. Obviously,
I can't say I've seen it.
Probably one of the lesser known on our list because it's not a huge anime film, but it's at the number 5 spot because I sort of remember so little of it.
How old were you when you first watched it? Do you reckon?
I've watched it twice, if I remember right. I watched it first when I was probably 15, and again when I was like 16.
Oh,
it was a film that I loved so much when I was younger that my first girlfriend, it was the second time she ever came over to my house. I was like,
you watched it.
I was like, oh my god! All right, we're gonna watch Summer Wars. We're gonna eat some dinner and watch Summer Wars together. Yeah. And it was a cute date, and it was a fantastically cute date. I'm sure, if I remember correctly. So, and that's testament to Summer Wars. Testament to Summer Wars and nothing else. Yeah. It did the job.
There we go. Very good.
Double jinx.
Very good.
You can now
Double
not
jinx.
speak for the rest of the podcast. I'm sorry.
I've got my kip.
I've got the Mr. Kip.
I've got my Mr. Kip.
No vocals and Jimbles.
So yeah, Summer Wars.
Yeah, mate, it's a strong opening. It is. There's.
I hope I did it justice.
No, mate, you did. It's a good justification for placing it there. Because even though it's 5th on the list, like to be in your top 5 of animated,
it's just the memory of it. It's fantastic. Yeah,
you're a big animated film fan as well, aren't you?
Yeah, we'll have a couple more talks about anime in the near future. Later on, because we've got a couple that are rocking on my list.
That's not an area I can offer any expertise at all on. I'm not at all educated, mate, so that'll be all over to you.
Gonna mix these worlds together.
Yeah, of course. Right, strong. So we'll. Shall I? Yeah. We'll go around to you, mate. We'll go around to you.
So
if you're done with the Kiplings.
Absolutely not. I'm just pacing myself. Animated films are a weird one. This list isn't something I've had in my head for a long time, like I have with other lists. Because I tend to just love I just love animated films in general. So this isn't that picky a list, but I'm pretty happy with what I came up with. And don't mean to start the conversation on it too early, but at numero 5 is Ratatouille.
Okay,
it's a bit lower down for me. It's still on the list.
I think it's good that it's coming there because we brushed over it very briefly in the intro, saying we watched it, so it makes sense for it to. I mean, it's not. Though after watching it, then definitely be an honourable mention for me. I don't know if was it going to appear in your list? Or?
Yes, it's similar for me. It's definitely an honourable mention. Right. It hasn't made it onto my 5.
Is it on yours?
Not quite. But it's an honourable. So that's perfect. So this is a really good time to talk.
But yeah,
about it.
Let's explore it.
Yeah, seeing as we just watched it now, we got the film fresh in our heads. It makes a really good time to talk about it. So what do you like about it, mate? Sorry, I'm trying to sneak my way into another bit. That was probably not a good time.
I'll
you can hold off, mate. You'll be all right.
I'm strong. Ratatouille is just a piece of art on the screen, I think. I think it's hard to pin it down, but it's such a great. Yeah, this is what I said to Corbin, one of our last guests and housemates, was watching it with us, and I think that's probably one of his favourite animated films.
Yeah, he's a big fan.
But it's just such a great premise. You write, you want to picture the kind of the office in which this was pitched. You have a rat who loves fine cooking, and like it's just the irony there is brilliant. It draws you in, and the way they deal with it is just so. It's so imaginative. It's so fun. But just the whole premise of we're in Paris, the center of fine cuisine in the world, and we're at one of the world's most famous chefs, English. The
Gusteau.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. All the French is running through my head after the film, mate. But I just think the film is shot really beautifully. Jamie was great at pointing out some of the screen grabs. What was the one on the bridge scene?
Oh yeah. One thing that I did really enjoy when we watched it just now, and something that I noticed kind of for the first time I feel since I've been watching it. Some of the ways that they frame that the characters are fantastic. Like the scene under the bridge, which you were alluding to there, where for people who have watched it, you might know what I'm talking about. For people who haven't, there's a scene where there's quite a sort of a power shift between the protagonist rat and the protagonist human, and the way they shoot it is just fantastic, using the animation to its fullest extent, distorting the size and the sort of depth perception of this rat and this human, really imposing this sort of big and small, and obviously the connotations of that on the screen is fantastic. And I think they use the idea and the character of Remy as a rat to such great effects in the film. It's a fantastic thing that they use, not just for it's kind of like it's almost a shock factor narrative effect where it's like, oh look, it's a rat cooking, but also grounding the rattiness of Remy in reality, the way that he's like a fly on the wall, able to creep around Paris and going through sewers and sort of going through little holes and sort of being a rat, like very wholly and entirely a rat. In the film, it's interesting how they use it in not just a narrative way, but also as a way of framing the actual action of the film. I think it's very well done.
Setting is, I think, I think a lot of animated films, not all of them, but certainly some of my favourites is setting is almost like a third kind of main character in a lot of them. And Paris, the Ratatouille really is like a great animated Paris film.
Yeah, it captures like the hubbub of the city like so well, and the score is a big part of that. Obviously the score in the film is so good, which in a lot of animated films is a significant part of it. But that film really does well.
Plenty to revisit on that later.
Of course, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of films where we dip into the score because there's massive on it.
There's, speaking of the score of Ratatouille, there's some classic bit. Well, first in terms of the running round bit, there's a classic bit where he's running through the ceiling of an apartment, and there's this French couple arguing, and she blows a hole. There's a gunshot goes off. And you see it, and there's this like classic just French argument, passion. There's a gun in the hand. You're like, what the hell's going on? And then they just drop the gun and start smooching. Yeah, and it's just this is a PG show, man. But it's just so like, you know, classic French stereotypes of passion and anger and stuff like that. And going back to the score though, there's the famous scenes of the food and the music. Where they basically they kind of synesthesia. They describe. There we go. That's one big word for me. That's a little. I've earned my Baguette tart.
We get it, mate. You're trying to impress us on the show. Understand, mate.
They mix coloured cooking, and because obviously it's a TV show, we can't taste the food that Remy's cooking. But they get us as close as they can with the.
It's an interesting way of trying to interpret senses other than sight. So taste in this case, visually.
And then
it works quite well. Like it makes you think about it in a way you might not have thought about it before.
The scene we're talking about is where Remy kind of closes his eyes, and it's just a black background, and he's trying two different mouthfuls of food, cheese and then strawberry in one. In another scene, cheese and grape. And they've got these little like swirly bits going, like kind of colours dancing in the background.
Lots of colour appearing.
And of course, the reason I love it is because they're doing it to jazz music.
Yeah, it's the music
So
as well.
They get the cheese as a soft mellow bass. And like that is just I think cooking and music's a great little analogy.
On the music front, particularly in that scene, one thing that I did notice is the jazz in the score for other parts of the film, particularly I think the closing of the film, where the score is most perhaps at its absolute peak. A fantastic really piece of music there. Really in those moments, it's quite distinctly different. It's jazz, like you were saying. It's got some jazz to it, and it's quite sharp. Like there's notes that are thrown in that are sort of not abrasive necessarily, but aren't sort of the
quite
the
jolting,
smooth,
sort of from what
some stuff that is sharp, essentially,
and not like the grapes,
precisely. Like it does Jamie. Actually, it carries that sense, like the reality of that food, the reality of that taste. It really does. Like you were saying, it manifests it wonderfully well in the audio of
definitely
of that scene.
And then I could talk about this, but we've just seen it, so there's obviously it's fresh in our minds, but I won't try to keep on it too long. But the other things I'd like to mention are the relationship between Remy and Linguini.
Linguini.
That was good. That was good.
You've just put me to absolute shame, mate. The relationship, like, there's so much comedy in it between the two of them. The whole rat controlling Remy. The scene where they're learning how to pull the hair and puppeteer is just great. And as I think we mentioned during the film, like they don't overdo the slapstick. With animation gives way to a lot of slapstick due to the fact that like you don't need stunt doubles.
Of course.
They're just computer images. But they were very tasteful with it, I thought, and a lot of laughs were had from the homies.
Of course. Well, that's what's good about watching an animated film back when you're older, because you laugh at different parts basically, which is always going to be the way. But
a couple of innuendos.
But not even apart from that stuff. Just some of the shots are just quite odd.
Definitely. It's got some fantastic moments.
But I don't think we can brush over it without mentioning the baguette snap.
Oh, the ASMR there.
It was filthy, mate. Oh.
The sound that made on so have you listened to Off Menu podcast? The thing
I've listened to a couple of them, but I haven't listened to them.
On that they often have, because it's a food based podcast. Yeah. They often have the discussion of like, if you could eat any food from a film, like animated or otherwise, what would you eat? And one of the shouts is quite often that baguette from Ratatouille. And I mean that's based purely on the sound, because honestly when that thing snaps in half, mate,
it sounds good.
I'd eat it. I'll tell you that for free.
Just to
not the only thing I'd eat from that film. Let's not.
Down, boy.
And we'll leave that there. We don't need to talk about that anymore.
You saucy bastard.
What's said is said. I'm sorry about it.
No, mate, don't be sorry. You know, the mic inspires honesty.
You were talking about the Ratatouille.
The
Ratatouille looks nice, mate. The Ratatouille.
Just to sum up the final scene with
that
Igor.
scene is
that Igor?
Ego.
Yeah. Ego. Ooh, interesting.
Anton Ego, I think.
Very Freudian.
That could be wrong.
But that scene where this brilliant gravitas field doesn't really make sense.
No, mate.
This huge critic is just, pompous, pretentious, cold, and then he's just taken straight back to the kitchen of his mum.
He just folds.
That scene is amazing.
Fantastic.
And
unbelievable.
Do you know what that scene does? I think, speaking about it now, I think it really gets at the essence of what good cooking is, as someone who loves cooking myself. It's all about the love. Love is the secret ingredient.
Love is the secret ingredient.
It really is, mate. I know how cheesy that sounds.
Jimbles 2020.
Pardon the pun, but
you got that coming out on a t-shirt.
I know it's cheesy.
That's good shit, mate. Should we write that down? You got that notepad actually?
I have a notepad right here.
Yeah. We'll jot that down
Fantastic.
for later. Anyway, please.
Yeah, we're gonna need to have a talk about this. You can't keep doing this.
Sorry.
In fact,
But I think that really gets at the essence of what good cooking's all about. And with that, I think it's a great comfort, like the Ratatouille food for Ego. Yeah. It's a great comfort film.
Yeah, it's a lovely.
No. It's a great shout as well, and it was like it's one. I'd thought, having watched it just then, I definitely thought about for an honourable mention, and it definitely deserves an honourable mention on my behalf. So I'm glad it's come up in someone else's list,
I think,
and that we've given it time to
turn my Bakewell time.
We've given it ample airtime.
You tuck in.
Jack, let's get started on your favourite topic.
Yeah, round to me. So this one we might have to brush over now because I feel like it might come up on Josh's list. And it's an animated film I've actually only seen once. So it's impressive that it's come onto my onto my top 5 just from that one viewing, but it was amazing. And so if it is going to be on your list, we'll come back to it later so you can talk about it in more detail. But that's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah. I thought is it going to be? Yeah, I thought it'd be on your one. So we can. I'm presuming it might be quite high up as well. And you don't have to give it away now, but so we can come back.
We'll just do.
Can a rough. For me personally. We'll do a rough,
and give your take
then we'll move around
because
the reasons are very personal in both cases.
Yeah, no, exactly. So. Well, for me, superhero-wise, Spider-Man's my favourite superhero.
Amen.
And always has been. And I really like. So what I like so much about those style films is like in a superhero film. Personally, I like the kind of like I like a more comedic kind of sort of slant to it. Because that feels a lot more comic book to me, and obviously that's the origins of superheroes and stuff. But I remember the main thing for me, and this might be a factor for you too, Josh, but Spider-Man for me is a very nostalgic thing because I loved it when I was younger, and so to have an animated film that sort of because Spider-Man, although I like all the films they're mixed, I'd say. And they all portray Spider-Man in very different ways. To have an animated film sort of capture the essence of what I liked so much about it as a child so well was really cool to see on the screen. Yeah. But it does that, but also takes it in a really, really different direction. And this is something we were saying about animated films obviously having a lot more freedom and a lot more license to do whatever because they're not constrained by like the boundaries of reality, obviously. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and you can gauge it by the title, obviously just goes far and beyond like I guess reality as we know it into just like it's some of the stuff that happens mad. And the animation does that justice, like does the concepts they cover really well. like the animation is really cool.
Yeah.
I think.
That's the only thing. I haven't seen it, so I'm interested to hear.
I'd really recommend.
I'm interested to hear. So obviously, yours just
we'll,
now.
We'll go into
Josh's
a bit more
take
depth.
later.
We'll go into a bit more depth when it gets around to Josh.
Yeah.
But I would really recommend it.
You distilled it to some very good points. Just out of interest, what are your favourite like versions of Spider-Man?
Of Spider-Man,
yeah. See if I can get more.
So it's a great question because I think the best Spider-Man is the most recent, being Tom. Talking about the real life ones, of course. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. I think he fits the character well, and he works really well within like the structure of the MCU. But my personal favourite is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Oh, sorry, I meant in terms of the
into the Spider-Verse.
The sorry, my apologies.
Oh,
I meant in terms of the different varieties of Spider-Man they have.
In this film.
Yeah. Or are you pretty indifferent? Is it just...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like having them all together is quite good. I quite like the idea of having when he first meets, the first guy he meets, like the kind of older Spider-Man that's got out of shape. I quite like the concept of having this young, sprightly Spider-Man, the old guy, well, not old, but like the Spider-Man who's past it and kind of out of shape, and like him trying to like get back into it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I quite like that aspect of that film. Also, soundtrack deserves a mention. Very different for like an animated film. A lot of big artists that they got on it, and some really good songs.
I've heard some of the music from it. Actually.
Well, some of the like
a couple of tunes I actually like.
I think Sunflower was like placed highly in the charts.
Yeah.
Which for a movie, I mean, I don't know how rare that is for a movie soundtrack to do, but like I can't think of one recently that had such a like. Yeah. Like just play, like regardless of the film, that song would have been played a lot on radio. And it's a good song, I guess. But yeah, so the soundtrack's really good as well.
Nice.
There's a lot about this good, but I think I don't want to speak too much on it because obviously if it's higher on Jones's list, he deserves a chance.
It's not that much. I want you to like mid.
That's fine. Well, you can give sort of like your highlights,
and we can go back into it.
Yeah, no, I've seen stills from it before, and I've always been impressed by what I've seen, like that very little sort of snippet of the animation. I've always thought it was very cool.
Yeah, it's good because I think like it's got so much praise.
Yeah, no, it did. Yeah,
I probably like you went into it with so much with such high expectations, and I think it's so. If a film meets high expectations that you have going in, that's really special because expectations are so important. I think for your first viewing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's hard if they're high. Like it's so easy to be disappointed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll go
straight back round to Jimbles, mate. The mic is
to
begging
for
the
guest.
My number 4, another anime entry. This time we're moving on to the Studio Ghibli offerings. We've got My Neighbor Totoro. For me at number 4, which I watched incidentally right at the start of lockdown, and it was late, and it was very late. It was like I watched it like 1 a.m, and it's a short film, but I watched it like 1 a.m, and it was like there were bits of that film where it's like U-rated. It's like it's a kids' film. I don't know, to anybody who's seen My Neighbor Totoro, you'll probably know what I mean a little bit, but there are parts of it that are so fantastical. And so, like, surprising, not in the sense that they surprise you on how they enter screen, but surprising just in their nature. Like, things that happen on screen. The bus that's also a cat is probably the operative example here. But, which are just surprising in their form and in how they are and how they exist in the world that's created.
Bit trippy.
It's trippy, yeah. Trippy's a great word for it, to be fair. And so I watched it so late. I was like, it's the creepiest U-rated film I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Really?
That's like probably the best way to put it.
Unsettling.
Yeah, but in a fantastic way, in a wonderful way.
It's not one of the Studio Ghibli films I've seen. I've seen 2 of them. This isn't one of them.
Yeah. So
I recognise. Oh, okay. Yeah,
so we've got.
I recognise that.
Yeah, we've got a still on the screen of the cat bus, which anybody who's seen My Neighbor Totoro will probably remember. And the film it has, and this is a theme of Studio Ghibli. We'll return to this later because I've got a Studio Ghibli film higher on my list. No prizes for guessing which one that is. But My Neighbor Totoro, it's so cute. It's one of the cutest films with one of the most imaginative. It's so imaginative. Like the world that they create, and this is something that Studio Ghibli is fantastic at. It's so close to home. They root it so well in the real world, while just pushing the boat out so much with the fantastical kind of spiritual almost elements of it.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful viewing experience in terms of being very life affirming to a person. It's fantastic.
I don't know that much, but from a recent, not so long ago, viewing of James May, Our Man in Japan, I remember just from the way he was going, not quite the same thing, but I remember when he was going around the island, like, I never really realised how much kind of like smaller gods play a part in life. And I can't remember this film very well, but I don't know, just when you mentioned spirituality and that, the idea of like maybe not little, but just like kind of forest spirits or stuff like that. Like, I think it's quite a, as far as I'm aware, it's quite a Japanese thing. I think it's cool that Studio Ghibli brings that to life. How would you, I'm sure many of our listeners are really well experienced with Studio Ghibli, but just out of interest, how would you describe Studio Ghibli to someone who's never heard of it? It's so unique, isn't it?
I think so. So Studio Ghibli, the way that I would probably, and I haven't seen every Studio Ghibli film, and they are very wide ranging. There are some, particularly some of the newer ones, some of the more recent ones, which I'm less familiar with, that are very slice of life is kind of the term that you use for anime, where it's realism, it's total realism. Realism in sort of the Ibsen sense of realism, the sense that they are...
Here we go.
The sense that they are
I like that.
real to life, and there is nothing particularly fantastical. They are just an attempt to portray all of the banality, but also like the wonderful elements of that. About the everyday. Celebrating the everyday. That's the much simpler and better way of putting it, definitely. So some of the more interesting ones do that, but they range from that to, and this is a film that we will speak about later, but I'll shout it out now because it feels appropriate, to Spirited Away, which is, if you've seen that, is one of the, it's bizarre, it's completely bizarre, but it has such a strong, when you watch it, it's got such a strong foothold in the real,
and it does,
and in
the
starts
completely in the
starts completely in the real, and ends completely in the real. It has such a strong grounding.
The structure's good in that sense.
Yeah, the structure's fantastic. And so all of what I'd say, Studio Ghibli films, they share this rootedness, this firmness in the real and the present. And to different extents, they explore what is beyond that. What is beyond that in the sense of what can be experienced from the real, like the peaks of like the experience you can get from the everyday. Yeah. They explore like the emotional kind of limits of that, and also the spiritual limits of what could be beyond that. Yeah. So Spirited Away is the prime example of that, where they stretch the real to its complete breaking point.
As far as you can go.
As far as you can even conceptualize, like, and they do that by just putting in, and I've got buckets on Spirited Away, because I think it's one of the most incredible pieces of art conceptually that I've seen in a hell of a long time. So they really stretch the breaking point, but there's a uniform grounding in the real, which I think makes them feel so pertinent when you watch them. They feel so like they're so emotionally potent. Which I love about them. I absolutely love about them.
You've put that so poetically and with such clarity, Jamie. Thank you.
Of course it is. Have you seen? Sorry, Josh. Have you seen the other Studio Ghibli I've seen is Ponyo.
I haven't. I've been meaning to.
Yeah, so I've seen Spirited Away and I've seen Ponyo. That one's very. I watched it quite recently. That one's similar in the Spirited Away sense to starting quite. It's sort of like somewhat realistic, as in like the base characters begin in reality, but then where it goes to like and because it's an animated film, they have the freedom to do so. Like it's really cool.
I mean, My Neighbor Totoro, just to return to that, is exactly the same. It starts off, it's a family, a small family with two young, I think they're twins, they might just be siblings, I can't remember, moving to a sort of a house out in the woodland, and their experience kind of grows from there, very organically grows from there. Like they venture into the forest and they gradually experience these forest things, and they're not sure what's going on, and they turn out to be so much more than they could have, so much more than the viewer could have imagined at the start is going on there, which is that's kind of the hallmark of Ghibli.
Do you think
taking it beyond?
Do you think the way you described it then just reminded me of the word wonder. Like the fact
absolutely,
that it's quite hard to mimic, what the kids are experiencing in this, because obviously we're like watching a film. These guys are in their world experiencing like magic, but when a film like just goes to a place that you couldn't even imagine, I think that really helps to recreate that sense of wonder.
Magic is the word. Magic is absolutely the word. Like, and they are magical. I think like something like a term that again we'll return to probably is like it's magic realism, which is a literary thing that I've been fairly recently introduced to in a module.
Gabriel Garcia
No,
Marquez?
I don't think so. Oh wait, so this is actually
Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one of those.
I think it's South American.
His books up there. Yeah,
quite possibly. I know magic realism's got origins in South America, but I'm not familiar with the specific roots of it. But it's got this, and the hallmark of that is this combination of the grounded and the everyday, but this kind of this sense of there being stuff beyond your understanding. Even as you experience those grounded elements, there's stuff going on that's just beyond what
and
you
it's
can.
It's how they're intertwined, though, isn't it? Like that's the whole point. Because there's such contrasting concepts, but how they're intertwined, like brings something.
Like you're precluded. You're not allowed to fully understand. It's a purposeful decision by whoever's made this text in that sense, or this film for these Studio Ghibli ones. It's a purposeful, intentional prohibiting of the viewer of fully understanding the world that makes you feel so much more embedded in it, because fully understanding something reduces it. It necessarily makes it feel smaller and kind of within you. If you can fully conceptualize it, then it's not got the fullness of a world that you necessarily can't in an hour and a half of viewing. So that idea that you're not allowed to fully understand really makes that world feel material, which I think is a fantastic thing that Studio Ghibli does with great effect. Like, it does fantastically well.
Yeah, mate.
Well, we'll move on there, because I've been rambling.
Mate, it's not rambling, mate. It's not rambling at all, mate. It's more intellectual than about 10 times that we've ever got on this podcast before, mate. So, and that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Well, I enjoy getting into that.
We love that, mate. Of course. Come on.
The grin on my face that grew during that little lecture, that was not Jamie's rambling. That was wow, you've actually you spat bars of wisdom there, my brother. Because that's actually that's something that's obviously it's floated around my head, but I've never been able to understand that bit of craft to it. Like the point you made about you feel it feels more real when you don't understand all of it, and that you just blow my mind to why I get that feeling from these kind of films as well as others. And I think that's the beauty of fantasy, really.
Yeah, of course. But
absolutely. Mate, wow, thank you.
Well said, mate. Well said.
No.
Yeah.
It's,
I might have to put it on my kitchen wall.
I mean, how are you gonna follow that, mate? That's a tough act.
Well, I've got Wreck-It Ralph in number 4.
Wreck-It Ralph is fantastic.
Fair play. Listen, Wreck-It Ralph's a good time.
I'm here for a conversation about Wreck-It Ralph.
Listen, mate, come on. Let's hear it. I'm here for it. I'm here for the discussion.
I'm gonna try and challenge that. Indubitably. Wreck-It Ralph.
Pull up the IMDb. Let me see the voice, because I can't quite remember the voice actors, but I'm sure they're quite recognisable.
Yeah. That's what you need, mate.
Names. Yeah, but who voices it?
I think his character design, Ralph's character design, is so good.
It's cool.
I think it's really, it's so it's very simple, but it gives me proper. Kind of like Hagrid, Harry Potter kind of.
He is a bit
it's got a bit of a mix of that
just big,
but the kind of
the Chad rat in a Ratatouille.
The Chad rat in Ratatouille.
that kind of vibe.
Like that proper. He's got the face and the physique of the lovable
John C. Reilly. Click on.
You'll recognise this guy.
Yeah.
It's that the stepbrother.
I don't think it was him.
The guy Will Ferrell does a lot of shit with.
Right. Let me just clear some of these.
Yeah,
by the way,
clear up the desk.
Viewers, don't worry.
Don't put on the white.
Don't worry. Yeah, I've had my last Bakewell for the evening. I've decided I can't ingest any more sugar.
We'll see about that.
I'm putting them on the speaker. That is for
Jesus. That was close.
It's got I didn't realise Wreck-It Ralph has a massive cast.
That's fucking Boyle from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And beneath him is Jay from Modern Family. Ed O'Neill voices of Mr. Litwack.
Speaking of Markowski, I can't remember the characters that well. I haven't seen it in a while.
Neither.
Boyle.
When did I watch it? I can't remember. Within the last year and a bit, I think. But it made my list just because I don't know, man.
Well said, mate.
I'm really bad at wording animated films, just because I find it really hard to explain why.
It's because they're quite personal. It's quite tricky to put into words sometimes.
Definitely. I think
unless you're this man sitting across from us right now. And
yeah, I know. Jamie, I need to take notes, man. But like what you said, like animated movies are very, very special, just because I grew up, like everyone, grew up on them, and I remember whenever I was sick at home and like really ill, my dad would always put on an animated film and then another one if I was still sick, and they were such a source of comfort. And Wreck-It Ralph, just like many others. Bro.
It's just a funny Wreck-It Ralph. It's a funny film,
bro. I'm trying to deep it.
I have no doubt in my mind that you will deep it.
See, Wreck-It Ralph isn't one I grew up with because it came out quite a bit later, but it just reminded me so much of that feeling. I don't know why, but I think it's just because we talk about characters so many times, but really it does boil down to just like they're so lovable and so human. The whole, it's very simple what's going on. Wreck-It Ralph is like the bad guy in his video game, and he's an outcast because that, and he has to be the bad guy. And there's all these themes, like with Ratatouille as well as films coming up in the future on our list, but a lot of themes of trying to fit in. And issues with that, and I think that's so real and that's so human. And when it's put on the big screen with these like stupidly huge characters, and it's in this video game world, and it's so silly, but there's something really real going on underneath it. And it just really exacerbates those emotions. But the whole plot of the little girl, what's her name, Vanellope.
Yeah,
Vanellope. Her whole again not fitting in and like being the the kind of odd one out of her video game world and struggling with that, and the way Ralph helps her with that. I don't know, man. It really got me. I have a problem with animated films, and the problem is that the tears start streaming. I'm not afraid to admit it on the microphone.
No, and there's no shame in that, mate.
I blubber, and this one suddenly got me, and I'm really struggling in this podcast, but it's because I'm in the presence of such greatness.
Nominated for an Oscar, was it?
Maybe, man.
I'm not surprised.
The world's cool, isn't it? Like because obviously it's within a video game. You've got so many different like landscapes you can kind of like base the film in.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And so and as obviously, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't watched it in a while, but like the idea is they move through like the different game worlds, don't they? Because they have like the license to jump between them, so you get such a variety of like landscape and setting within the film.
Yeah.
Which is obviously important for a child, like being a kids film, like that deals with things like attention span and whatnot. But like as an adult,
I think I was like 18 when I watched it, but
but that's my point.
Yeah.
As an adult, you can still appreciate variety in like visual spectacle.
Yeah, definitely.
And it provides that.
They really do a great job with the video game thing. There's a lot of big, looking here, we got Sonic, we got I think Mario's in it at one point.
I forget they had like actual.
Yeah,
they must have had to get the license. That must have been quite expensive to get all the licensing for those
as well.
Yeah, but it is Disney.
Oh,
true. They've got the peas, mate.
Like most animated films, they take the idea and
these the bad guys. Is that the whole thing?
Yeah. There's
bad anonymous.
Yeah, so there's an image we got here of really early on, like what I talked about him being left out because he's the bad guy, but doesn't want to be the bad guy. And then early on he goes to this bad anon, which is like Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's bad guy anonymous. And there's a picture here with literally Bowser, the devil, one of the guys from Street Fighter, the orange Pac-Man ghost, literally just sitting around. I just think it's so funny the way they humanize all these elements, and they do it in such a, I don't know, there's such taste to it. Like they don't overdo it, and the comedy comes from that again. There's a huge amount of irony, the fact that these like little pixels behind a screen, like you imagine that they have these lives and they're like complaining. It's a very adult way. I don't know. I think it's brilliant.
No, it's a fantastic film. I loved it when I watched it. It was one that I thought about whilst constructing my list. It didn't make it onto my list, but I did it. It popped into my mind. Not for a mass amount of time, but it was on my mind because it is a really fun film and it's fun.
Yeah.
Again, like we're saying, one of the things that animated films have the option to do is they can do these concepts that are very different to what you can do with live action, and it's got such a fun concept. It's such a fun concept, I thought.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I gave it some good time.
Yeah, definitely. They really pushed the boundaries with the video game stuff. Just it's so fun.
Yeah, it real Monsters Inc. vibes from like how they laid out the sort of the inside of the video games.
Great film, by the way. That
fantastic.
Monsters Inc. deserves an honourable mention.
If
it hasn't jumped onto, it's not on my list personally, but that is a serious honourable mention for me.
But
that's a big one, big one from when I was younger that I really liked. Monsters
fantastic
Inc.
film.
Because obviously that came out around the time we were like very young at that age, and I used to really like
it's a brilliant film.
But I'll just sum up with like I don't. It's not. This is what the list is hard for me. 'Cause it's not like I don't think it's better than that many other animated films, but it's just a good gold standard. And when I watched it, I was really in that moment where I needed a home comfort animal film, and it
isn't there a sequel?
Yeah, I don't think it's as good though.
I haven't seen it, I don't think, but I don't know.
Great comfort film.
Well, there you go, mate. Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah, they ought to be. This one is a real personal favourite of mine, and that is Wallace and Gromit.
Hey, I forgot about that.
The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Now, it's not my favourite Wallace and Gromit feature, but the majority of the others are TV episodes. So search Curse of the Were-Rabbit because we need to get specific.
Yeah, I remember it.
I had to go for the film version, and the big feature-length film is Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I've seen this film so many times. There's so much about it I really like.
It's funny.
To start with, I'm a big fan of stop motion animation. It's one of my favourite styles, and I like to have it. So how Aardman obviously animates all their stuff is with like the clay figurines, which I just think is so cool. Like when I watch it, I just think of like the intricacy of every single shot and how they've literally had to mould a different clay model for the most minuscule details in a shot if they want to change it, and they don't cut back because of that. Like there's so much detail in every shot. Like it could be so easy just to have the two characters animated on the screen, but they don't do that. They have them in like a setting within a house that has multiple different rooms, and then within the different rooms there's pictures on the wall, there's wallpaper, everything that's like changing all the time. Yeah, exactly. So many different settings. It's also really funny. Pull up, go on YouTube quickly and search. There's one line that genuinely is so funny. Search Wallace and Gromit arson, as in like fire arson, AARSON. See if it comes up. All right, do that top one. That's 60
There's a lot of results.
Turn it up a bit. And do that top one.
That song's still playing.
Pause that. Turn it up a little bit so we can hear it.
Here we go. If you ask me, I'll tell you. If you ask me, this was arson. Aye, someone arsing around.
And it's just little bits like that. That is so good. The thing is, but even before he tells the joke, it's the guy in the crowd that goes, "Oh, here we go," and he just knows what's coming, and then he drops. This is after the were-rabbit's gone through the church and broke it. So behind there you can see a smashed stained glass window. He's smashed through the window. But yeah, it's really funny. It's also a pretty like interesting like plot. Like it's kind of like scary in a number. Well, obviously not scary, but like the themes it plays on are scary.
I have memory of it as a kid and being sort of like very entertained and slightly spooked by it.
There are. I remember some shots when I was younger that genuinely were somewhat spooky.
Yeah.
There's bits I can remember particularly where like the were-rabbit has like run away and there's like fog over the back. It's a very classic like kind of like horror gothic setup, and there's just like the outline, so it's still comedic because it's the outline of a giant rabbit. Rather than like a wolf, but still the image of something like disappearing.
Yeah, the rabbit itself is very imposing.
That's what the film does so well. Is it, like if you take it for what it is, it's a parody of werewolf films.
Yeah,
and the fact that they do that with Wallace and Gromit. who are just like
adds to the
they're just gold, because I love the TV episodes of Wallace and Gromit.
Fantastic.
Personal favourite's probably The Wrong Trousers. If you're familiar.
No, I remember
with the penguin.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, I had to go.
Also slightly eerie at points. That episode with the penguin.
With the penguin, yeah. He's quite a good character.
Like quite
no dialogue at all, and that
force
is
in the episode.
Yeah, alpha penguin.
Yeah, very alpha, scarily alpha.
Yeah, he scared me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah. A great option.
It's I find it so rewatchable, and for me this is quite a big thing for animated films that I have actually spoken about before, but it makes sense to talk about it now. So you talk about animated films, is that I can watch the film for purely the plot and the story, because it's really entertaining and it's funny as a parody and funny in its own right, like lines like that. But I can also sit back with films like this, in the case of like a stop motion animation film, and watch it just for the animation and the detail that's in every single shot, and just really appreciate it for that.
Yeah.
And I think a film that you can appreciate on those two levels is worth mentioning in a list like this.
Definitely.
You just scroll past the picture of Chicken Run. That's an honourable mention for me. Another Aardman film that is so good.
Chicken Run is good. I saw a bit of
style. Exactly the same style.
Is that the name of the studio?
Aardman, yeah. Okay. So they do Flushed Away.
That is
Flushed Away. I know intimately.
I'm not as big a fan of it, but it's still funny.
Neither.
I prefer Wallace and Gromit. I prefer Chicken Run.
People frequently tell me that I look like the main character from Flushed Away.
Wait, pull him up. Pull up Rodney the Rat.
Accusation.
Pull up Rodney the Rat.
Which is levelled at me with regular frequency.
I mean,
maybe clean shaven.
It's clean shaven.
Yeah,
when I was younger, probably.
Difficult to judge with the beard.
Yeah.
Rodney the Rat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just something
as handsome,
that gets thrown
Jamie.
around.
Just as handsome, mate.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
There's a lot of weird rat pictures on.
We'll shut that down with immediate effect.
We don't need that,
because that was scary.
Anyway, that's my number 4, Wallace and Gromit, because the wear of it. On this list, probably it might be my most watched one of the 5. If it's not my most watched, it's definitely up there. I've seen it a lot of times.
My next one is certainly the most watched one of my 5.
Well, then let's segue into it, mate. Go ahead, please.
My next one is Coco.
I've heard of that.
The recent Disney Pixar. I believe it's Disney Pixar. If I'm wrong, then
I haven't 2017. I haven't seen this.
I've heard many good things about this.
It is, and the Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb scores for it are glistening. They are fantastic.
Really? Oh, they're good.
I think it's got 97% of Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. Wow. It's got something crazy like that. But Coco, I take it you guys haven't seen it.
No.
I'd love to.
I saw it.
It's really something. It's a film that I've seen a number of times. It's a massive comfort film.
I really like the whole Mexican.
It's it's Mexican.
Day of the Dead, I think, is such a cool aesthetic.
That is the whole premise of the film is built around the sort of the Day of the Dead.
There we go.
The sort of the mythos of the Day of the Dead and what that means culturally.
So
it's fantastic. It's a film that's beautifully animated. It's based around music, so the whole concept is based around this kid who loves music, wants to do music, but his family, for sort of reasons going back generations, are anti-music. He had an ancestor who was a musician and then sort of ditched the family and ran away, supposedly. And you learn over the course of the film that was maybe less true than is assumed at the start. And for that reason, he's told that he can't do music, and this young boy is he's not allowed to follow his passion. And he ventures into the world of the dead through sort of various through some plot twists and turns. He's in the world of the dead, where he can engage with his hobby of music and sort of learns a lot about his family and his family
the family backstory and stuff.
Yeah, and so I won't say much more about it for not wanting to spoil it for you guys, because I highly recommend you watch it.
Mate,
it's one of those films that you get into the opening maybe 10-15 minutes and you think, it might be standard, but great, but standard Disney fare. It might be standard Disney fare, which is
hey man, that's the gold standard I was talking about.
But it was just frequently fantastic. I think Disney Pixar films are just brilliant. I think that a lot of them are incredibly good.
A lot of them are
like,
really good.
but the story for this is done so well, and the thing that makes it like the side characters, those kind of those kind of like
these pictures I've got up
the
here
number
show
two
the family. And all the characters just look like they have beams of personality.
Yeah, they do. They do a fantastic job of giving even characters who
the guy on the left looks good with the tash.
Yeah. They've got some great ones.
What about that dude at the front?
Mate,
well,
he's
I can only see the side of his head.
That guy, that uncle's
cowboy hat.
Bro.
Yeah, true.
But the characters they give them fantastic. Even on some who have 10 lines maybe.
That's what you need sometimes.
They give great sort of charisma, great verve.
Yeah. It's tricky.
It's a wonderful film.
When
it's
a
a
film's
wonderful
like a more. It's hard to judge a more recent film fairly sometimes because you're like, I don't know if I'm just watching this and it's good because it's new, or vice versa. I don't know if I can appreciate this fully because it hasn't stood the test of time yet. Mm-hmm. But like yours, sometimes you do just watch film and you know, like it.
But like Coco, I think it came out in 2017. I think I must have watched it 5 times.
Yeah,
I think it's probably 5 times.
Wow. Wait, when did it come out?
2017, I think. Yeah.
And did you
I watched it in the cinema.
Oh, wow.
I watched it in the cinema when it came out. Yeah.
Watch the Angel Slices.
Hands off.
Off the Angel Slices.
So I watched it in the cinema, and I feel like it might be 5 times total that I've watched it. And it really stands up. It really does. And I've watched it a lot.
That's good. And it's testament to a good film if it can enter your list having been released early or you having only just seen it like once or twice.
Absolutely.
I just love the aesthetic. Like, I think we've mentioned this quite a lot, but animated films are, you're painting the screen, and the colours here are just incredible. The way the characters look, the way they've done the skeletons are just really.
Oh, it's fantastic.
They've made skeletons look so. I don't know, family friendly.
Yeah, they do a wonderful job when you watch it of animating those skeletons. Like those skeletons have such personality,
like kind of like disjointed jaws type thing, and
like whether this was an artistic choice or not. I imagine it probably was, but the skeleton characters, so these sort of characters who exist in the world of the dead as opposed to the world of the living, where you start the film, I'd say they're much more fleshed out, ironically. Than the characters at the very start.
Wow.
Than those real world characters. That they really are. And I feel like that was a very conscious choice, and it's done and it's made possible through like their dialogue is very personal. Like the story that develops when you're in the world of the dead is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And the way that they're animated, it really gives them personality. Yeah. It really gives them real depth of character. It's a real achievement. It's a real achievement. It's a fantastic film. I really, really enjoy it.
All the things you said are really what animated films excel at.
Absolutely. It's Disney really is Disney at its best. The music again is lovely. Some of the songs are fantastic, and it's very music heavy, and they do a great job of building it into the story.
I have to add that to the watch list.
Yeah, definitely.
No, absolutely. I recommend.
We can watch that
if you like Ratatouille, I imagine
that kind
it's quite soppy. Like Coco is soppy.
I'm all for that sometimes.
It's soppy in the best possible way. In a way that's very compelling. It's very compelling in its soppiness. I'm gonna ditch the toilet.
Yeah, mate. No way.
Yeah, don't worry.
I have broken the seal in convincing fashion.
Well,
I might carry on with your number.
Luckily, my number 3 is Into the Spider-Verse, which we already touched on a little bit.
Of course.
We can begin the discussion.
Jamie, can you destroy my room?
Sorry, I am
taking
it. So back to Into the Spider-Verse, which comes in at my numero 3. I can't type and talk at the same time.
There it is. It's top one. That's right.
So I'll just give a little story about when and where I watched this.
Story.
So I just think it's quite funny the way I watched this. Like you were saying, Jack, in terms of it's weird when you watch an animated film later, given how big a part they are of your childhood, and it's weird that it has that much of an effect on you when you're older watching it. So I watched this in the summer of 2019 on a plane. I was, as I've already mentioned, I'm I'll get into the context a bit more. We were going to long haul flight to Asia, and there's me and my friend Finn, and he was sitting on the left, I was sitting in the middle, and some random bloke was sitting to my right. And, at the start of the flow, just like, oh, sorry, mate, oh, where are you from? Just, chatting, getting to know him a little bit, being nice. Some normal, the most normal bloke you've ever met, mid-20s, works in Southampton. And just finished a nice, normal conversation, sit down, we each put a film on, I put this film on, and within the first 5 minutes, I start blubbering. And I'm trying to hold...
5 minutes?
I'm trying
what
to hold
happens within 5 minutes?
Not even that much, but it's like you mentioned about the nostalgia.
Just the nostalgia.
It just took me back to being a kid.
I can hear that, yeah.
And I've waited so long for like a Spider-Man film that felt so much like Spider-Man. I know other people, like you said, you like Tom Holland a lot. I think he's a great individual Spider-Man.
Tom Holland, I think, is the best Spider-Man live action this is. He's not my personal favourite is Tobey Maguire.
Okay. Yeah. So the film's never really...
Spider-Man 3, when he's walking down the street.
Ka-chow!
Exactly like that.
Watch you're not a true film buff unless you watch the video of that.
Well, it's a masterpiece.
Without him walking down the street, without sound, without music. Yeah. It's so good.
But I mean, that's a potential future episode in itself.
Yeah. So we know Finn, the honourable mention, is going to do superheroes maybe at some point. But anyway, I'm sitting watching this film, and just a flood of emotion of me being Jamie, get off my bed.
The entrance.
A flood of just nostalgia
stripe in hand
comes back at me, and I'm trapped on this plane between two dudes. One of them I have no idea who he is, and I've just met, and I'm trying not to cry.
Trying to hold it down.
I'm trying to hold it in, but the tears are rolling down the face. I'm just like, please don't look to your left, mate. And then the film goes on. It's just. I have a weird thing with animated films where, like, just them being really well made, just, I don't know, it gets me really emotional. Again, the nostalgia and stuff like that, but there's something about I think animated films really distill storytelling to its absolute purest form. I don't really know how else to word it, but just because everything's so... everything's so exacerbated. It's so heightened with the animation, the art style, the characters, the movements, the body language, and I don't know. I think it just makes it like I think we've been hinting at this a lot of the way through this, but it almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I think I already used it, but it literally just exacerbates the human condition. And I just think this film in particular was just the start, this kid starting school. I can't even remember the plot that much, but it's Spider-Man, man. This, no, I don't think I have. I can see it from the tears in my eyes, actually. But
of course.
I got too excited. I forgot what happens in the film. I think we touched quite well on the what it does as a new addition to the Spider-Man thing, playing with the parallel universe stuff very creatively, and not in a way that actually ruins the plot. There's a lot of opportunity for stuff like this to really take any suspension of disbelief. Because it's so like, they could just resolve the plot in this quick action. But I think the villain is very well set up to make sure that isn't a problem. Because he's also part of this technology, and this is the thing. I think this movie really captures what Spider-Man's about, which is just the individual neighborhood friendly neighborhood spider.
That's a good point.
He's chaotic, he's mischievous, but in a way that he's just joking, but he's also a good person. And the relationships between the different versions of Spider-Man are great as well. The relationship the main character has with his father, I think that's what got me in the start.
That bit is moving.
Definitely,
I agree.
I can't remember what we'll have to rewatch it when we talk about Spider-Man in the future, but something about his father being a police officer, and just the relationship between those two is very real in terms of his ambitions. And I don't know, it sometimes thing with storytelling is it just surprises me how real they make these imaginative things feel. And when it's animated, it just shocks me even more how someone just comes up with this, a studio people, and it just surprises me how it can move you as you're watching it. And I think that's why these films get me in that kind of way on that plane next to that stranger.
One thing, so you're saying about what you just said then made me think that it's one thing I thought was so good about this film is that it's so true to the comics on one hand, but then also takes Spider-Man in a completely different direction to a lot of stuff that's covered both in the comics and also in like the films prior to this. Like it's so different. Partly obviously because animation, like we said before, offers the freedom to be able to do those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. It also really keeps true to that spirit of Spider-Man. Like I've already mentioned about the what Spider-Man is as a superhero. His personality is huge, but also just in the animation style. The I know it's very cheesy, but the classic comic book pals and just
yeah. But that's
the stuff that I've seen. That's the kind of screen grab stuff.
And the thing is, that is so classic, but it's only classic for the comic books. Like that's not something you see in film so much, because I feel like
even now,
a lot of
animated
producers
movies
or directors would want to avoid that stuff because it's so quote unquote cliche.
Yeah.
So then to actually put it in a weird kind of way almost isn't cliche because no one else really does it.
Yeah, it's just that classic cycle of like comic books were kind of cheesy, but they're so kind of vintage now that like what made that art form of the comic graphic novel that like so unique and just grabbing people at the time, they're putting that back into film. I think that's another reason. Like it's just the waves of nostalgia are actually, there's quite a lot of layers to that, and that it really brings the comic book form alive on the film for people who aren't. I haven't read that many comic books. I used to read a couple of Spider-Man ones when I was younger, but it's so inventive with that, and it really pushes the animated film medium. Sorry, Jamie.
I feel like I need to watch this now.
It's really good.
I haven't, and I'm very familiar, but I'm yet to watch it.
I will
do on your glowing recommendation.
It's a bit longer I'm not sure what the runtime is, but I remember it being quite long for an animated film. But that's not, probably something like 2 hours, but that's not a bad thing, to be honest, because it's just so visually appealing the whole way through, and so varied in like the landscapes.
The feast for the eyes. There
it really is.
The one of
all sorts of stuff like
the Spider-Man character looking over, presumably what is New York. I presume it's New York. It looks very New York to me. It's lovely. It's fantastic.
I think we've touched on all the points that I feel really strongly about, and it
made a good hand of it.
Just on that plane journey, I couldn't help myself but blubber.
It's quite a funny film to break down. But it's the nostalgia, like you're saying.
There's a but this is why I love doing this kind of stuff. There's a reason people love this film, and it's interesting to get a why, because people get disappointed by their favorite characters getting ruined in reboots all the time. And it's interesting to ask, like, why are people doing the complete opposite with this one? Yeah. It's so easy to screw up, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jack?
Great film.
Number 3.
Yeah, 3 for me. So, as I mentioned before, in animated films, I'm quite a big fan of comedy.
Yeah,
Wallace and Gromit being my last pick.
Wallace and Gromit
and so, no. If only I could have Wallace and Gromit 5 times over. So, 3 for me is what, in my opinion, probably what I find to be the funniest Disney film, and one that I've loved for a long time. It's one that if I'd have done this list a couple years ago, something like that probably would have been my number 1, but has dropped down since, and that's The Emperor's New Groove.
That is a great
The Emperor's New Groove.
That is fantastic.
Keep your trousers on, Jamie.
For comedy value for a Disney film, I think so good. Both, again, as we said before, both as a child but as an adult.
Yeah.
There's something for both there. It's a bit more of a...
Right. That was my Kronk impression.
Is it Kronk? Yeah, he does. Kronk is a great character. Kronk's the best character.
He does carry the
scene
film
with the angel and the devil on his shoulders.
I watched it. Sorry, instantly.
No, mate, please jump in.
I watched it for the first time this year, like about 2 months ago. It was the first time that
I watched it a lot when I was younger.
I think when I was very young, like I had memory of the characters, but I couldn't remember the film at all. And so maybe for the first time since I was 6 or 7, I watched it a couple of months ago, and it made me crack up.
It's really funny, man.
Kronk as a character.
Kronk's the best.
Absolutely hilarious. Like the best, the funniest character I've seen in any film he's that Disney kind of era. Definitely.
He's definitely up there, but it's also like the story. It's easy for the story, I guess, to slip under the radar a bit with it being so funny. Of course. But the story itself is really good too, because at the start, Kuzco, who is the main character, who is really funny as well, but he's really stuck up. He's the emperor, so I guess it's hard to be. But he's stuck up, and he's so condescending to all the characters. Patcher especially, who comes in, and then the the way events turn out, and he ends up having to get Patch's help, and then he finds out basically it's the story is one in which, and it's quite a classic Disney plot, but it's finding about what really matters in life. But it's really nice to see a character who is previously so condescending become
what a character arc.
So like the character arc's a big thing in it.
Especially
and
him being the one that you like, him being the one that you ride with, like the protagonist who you are attached the main character to, is such an important distinction, because you can imagine the Emperor's New Groove where
there is a Kronk's New Groove. Actually.
Is it actually?
Yeah, they made a Kronk's New Groove.
Interesting.
I can't remember it as well, but there is one.
Fair, but like you can imagine the Emperor's New Groove where rather than riding on Kuzco's shoulder, you're riding on Patch's shoulder. That could easily be a Disney film that you could watch, but it would be less compelling. It'd be less.
It almost makes more sense for a Disney film to be from Patch's perspective.
Yeah,
so that's perhaps something that makes it quite interesting that it's from Kuzco's.
Of Disney to give you this film from Patcher, Patcher for any viewer who hasn't seen is sort of the very lovable character.
Family man.
He's a family man.
Yeah.
His narrative is essentially one of I'm trying to secure my family's livelihood and life and home. That's his priority. And so it would be very typical Disney to ride with him for the story. But you don't. You ride with Kuzco. Who
of course comes together with Patcher. But
of course.
But you get a lot of just Kuzco prior to that.
Even late in the story, you get Kuzco being a complete dickhead.
Yeah,
you get being a complete dickhead late in the story. And so it's a very interesting way of framing a typical kind of Disney narrative. You get it from a different perspective that is so compelling and makes it so much more entertaining. I think you find it funnier for that reason as well, because you don't see because you're not that sympathetic towards Kuzco for most of it. So when stuff goes wrong, it's not an it's that's kind of fun.
You had it coming kind of thing.
You have like an entertainment value from those events.
I don't know. There are some shots where when he's first the llama in the rain in the wood that is pretty sad.
There's a good balance there for sure.
I think you guys kind of touched on something about these movies, especially the Disney ones, that they're really good. And you think about them as kids' films, they're really good wow, I've tried setting up perfectly, but they're great at teaching morals, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And you pointing out the uniqueness of this film, it's quite a lot. I guess it's kind of teaching you about the pitfalls of narcissism and egotistical ways of thinking, which is very. You think about trying to teach that to a kid. Like, if we go into this a bit deeper, like, kids can be just selfish pricks quite a lot of the time. It's quite,
Josh.
Hey, mate.
They're just kids, mate.
No.
You'd have to lay into just all children in the world, mate.
No, okay, I'm just making the...
Podcast episode 4. Josh versus kids.
Josh versus the world.
I fucking hate him! But, okay, let me wheel up a little second. Let me backtrack. What I mean is, I think when you're a kid, it's quite easy to not think about other people's perspective as much. That's part of being young and being immature, not growing up. I think it's great that a film kind of points out.
Sorry. Continue.
Look, mate, these Bakewell tarts have got to.
Yeah. They're strong. They're strong.
Someone dropped some crack.
It's not a sugar rush.
Yeah, mate.
Lace the Bakewell tarts.
The Bakewell tart?
No.
He's chopped the pack, mate. And the angel slices too, mate. They've all gone down the hatch.
I was gonna say.
Don't tell a soul.
Oh my god, that's a lot of Bakewell.
They're wanderers off the zoinks.
I think it's great to. Zoinks. Look,
right, I don't know.
Go on, Josh. You got.
I'm gonna get cancelled. I'm gonna get
one neat line.
You were doing so well.
I'm gonna get cancelled here, but
what are you gonna get cancelled?
No,
not again.
You've already been cancelled once.
But I think it's a great moral teaching. Like a lot of these, it's great at teaching morals. Like you said, family and stuff like that's what matters, and looking out for other people, and especially an Emperor character learning that is, I think, very, very poignant.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Thanks,
guys.
Good way to wrap it up.
Well saved.
Nicely done.
On that note, I got to follow suit and take a leak.
You got to take a leak.
But I'll be back, mate. Please.
That was
Jack.
your number 3.
That's
Jack.
my number 3.
Jack,
so now
leave
we're on
me.
to 2. So please go ahead.
So what's
Jack,
number 2?
Don't leave me in here with him.
Sorry,
please. Jack, don't go.
You're gonna be okay.
No, don't touch me.
Okay, I was touching.
But Jamie, start up and then I can just read.
Of course. I'm sure you slot in fantastically well.
Number 2.
My number 2 is, and it's one that I'm always surprised hasn't come up already on any other list, but I'm excited to talk about it regardless. Is Fantastic Mr. Fox, the Wes Anderson classic. Has he got it? Has Jack got it?
He loves that film.
Does he? Well, potentially. I mean, Josh is gesturing frantically to the door which Jack has just left through, and so it seems that we might be talking about this at slightly more length later on. So I'll give you some highlights of my experience.
I think a great way, like the way me and Jack did with Into the Spider-Verse, is you're really good at giving a rundown of what the film's about.
I'll give a rundown. Like Jack will give his hot takes on
and also why it's so high up for you as well. Because number 2's pretty goddamn high.
Yeah,
that's a scary picture.
I think the Fantastic Mr. Fox. It takes a lot of what you can do with animation, and it really maximizes it. Not in the sense that it takes it to the most unrealistic, or like what can I imagine that can be drawn, and just putting it onto film. It doesn't do that necessarily, but what it does, it takes the form and it ties it beautifully to the narrative. It ties it so intricately to the narrative, and then pushes that, like those combined factors, it takes that to the extreme.
That's really interesting.
Which I think is fantastic. It's a really beautiful film, like aesthetically, like the way that it's set out on the screen, it has this flatness to it, which is kind of the opposite of what most animators and sort of these screenwriters are trying to achieve.
Yeah, look what's on the screen.
It's a fantastic.
No, it's not.
It is. This is my number 2. It's wonderful, is it not? And so this flatness that we have in the scenes, in the way that they set their characters against the background.
Do you think the mic picked up the handshake?
Quite possibly.
But I'll drink to that.
It's something that I think most animators, particularly because I watch a decent amount of anime, like I'm familiar with a lot of anime films, and flatness is kind of the enemy of the animator in most circumstances. Wow. Like you want the thing that's hard to replicate is depth sometimes, and that sense of a scene being more than the sum of its parts. Like in a shot in a live action film where you've got extras walking through the background and you've got activity and you're filming a person in front of a thing, you can get that foregrounding and backgrounding wonderfully well. But in animation, you've got to generate that, you've got to produce that.
That's so interesting.
And Fantastic Mr. Fox and Wes Anderson's films generally, even in his live action, have you seen many of the live action films? I've seen
Grand Budapest
Hotel, which is one of my favourite films of all time. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Like he purposefully creates flatness in the aesthetic of the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is impeccable. It's fantastic how he does that.
Mate, thank you for that.
And the way that he generates that in Fantastic Mr. Fox it's so against the grain of what an animator feels compelled to do that I appreciate the aesthetic for that reason, if nothing else. I appreciate his the verve, the entrepreneurism of I want flat, I want compact aesthetics, I want these characters to feel like they are almost trapped in a game, like they're moving laterally.
Oh wow, the way
they're stuck in this kind of in this screen, which they can't go forward.
The table,
they can't go.
This world isn't flat.
I have 4 red stripes deep.
I have just clobbered my elbow on the table, somewhat. But the point stands that the idea of this.
The point stands.
That this flat aesthetic, this idea that there is no forwards or backwards or in or out. It's just left or right, and you have to choose. It gives this. And given the narrative is one about being stuck and about sort of having this, these limited options almost. That's what the narrative is kind of formally about. It frames that wonderfully. The idea of this flat screen.
It does everything wonderfully.
It's fantastic.
I think the way you've been able to...
fantastic.
That's a really interesting craft point, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But also I like the way you link that to the narrative. Because I think it's one of those, like, you've got to know the rules to break them. And I think
perfect.
a big part of that is don't break the rules for the sake of breaking them to be entrepreneurial. But the way you've finished that off is he's breaking the rules, but that's because it serves the narrative context of the film. The fact that these animals are playing a game against the farmer, is it? I believe.
Yeah.
There's three farmers.
Three farmers.
Longest bunce and bean.
But the way
one fat, one short, one lean.
Nice.
These horrible crooks, so different in looks, were nonetheless equally mean.
Are you a rapper?
If you will.
But just the way you link that to the narrative, it's not that craft serves a very deep purpose as well as just being so unique. So brilliant.
Yeah, and it's just beautiful, fleshed out. The characters are fantastic. It's a really great film. It's like there's not much more that I'll say on it. Jack, I'm sure you've got plenty more to add. If it's coming up for you, I don't want to.
It is coming up. Don't worry about that. It is coming.
It was Josh referenced the fact that it might be.
Of course it is.
So I'll leave you to fill in the blanks.
I couldn't be happier that this has come up on someone else's list for these films.
It's a great
talent.
As I've said before,
talent.
I feel strongly about this film. Like it's so good.
It's a wonderful film.
But we'll come to that. And the points you made there about it are really good because that's not quite something I've necessarily considered with it before, and it's interesting to consider it in the context of like the rest of Wes Anderson's films.
No, it's the main thing that I've noticed about any Wes Anderson film. So I've seen this. I've seen the Grand Budapest Hotel. I love Isle of Dogs. I've watched, but I didn't watch.
Deserves an honourable mention on animated lists.
I enjoyed it a lot. But all of them in some way or another, and this is true of a lot of narratives and a lot of films in some sense. But it's about sort of this sense of being enclosed or being trapped, and the way that it's framed, just I feel particularly in Fantastic Mr. Fox, it just brings it to the fore beautifully. It's such craftsmanship in filmmaking. It's really lovely.
For sure.
But I'm done rambling.
No,
Josh,
not rambling at all.
Done
please.
Wisdom spitting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on to my number 2, and this is an interesting, a Studio Ghibli film.
I know.
I haven't seen this one. I haven't
seen
this one. I don't think.
One that I have watched, but not for so long.
Mate,
not for
same.
such a long time.
That's why I don't think I'll have too much to say about this.
Fond memories though. But
yeah, pretty much like every film I've mentioned so far, I watched it at just a time when it blew my mind. So this is why I really enjoyed what you had to say about Studio Ghibli films earlier, because it kind of explained the feeling the film gave me that I hadn't really got from a film before. And shout out to my big cousin Anna, but I remember she recommended this film for me a long time ago. Funny enough, she went Nottingham as well. But I was, I think, 14 or 15, and I remember just, we were talking about it at a big family event, and she was just bigging it up a lot, and I was like, okay, I'll give that a try. Just, a quiet winter evening, and I was just chilling in my room. I was like, okay, feeling kind of bored, put this on. And it was just exactly what I needed, just the sense of wonder and awe that I hadn't had from a film in a long time. And I don't think there's anything that specific about this particular film compared to the other Studio Ghibli films that gave me that, but it was just my first look into the weirdness of the worlds they create, where it's very real. This one's quite a bit old-fashioned, actually. The village it's set in is very, very archaic, kind of 1800s and summery, and old-fashioned clothes and top hats and stuff like that. But it's so much colour and beauty that I don't know. And I can't really remember the premise that much. But there's this girl who works in a clothes shop in this village, and there's something creepy going on, like with a lot of these spiritual wave films. There's something quite dark and unnerving, but there's a guy called Howl who has this moving castle, which it's quite hard to explain.
It's a beautiful kind of tool in the plot. The moving castle itself is it's such a fantastic idea and so well executed.
It's very steampunk, actually. Looking at that.
Very steampunk. Takes it in a really nice direction.
That's the castle.
What's
steampunk is this kind of fictional
It's an aesthetic that has sort of quite industrial revolution, so very industrial kind of motifs in the aesthetic,
right.
has this kind of a sort of slightly futuristic take on them. It's probably
like
the best way to put it.
Like Boomtown.
Okay.
You would assume something like a Boomtown. It is very Boomtown, actually.
Yeah.
Shout out to all my Boomtown ravers, but
God, shut it down.
Like the party.
Jevons.
Do you guys like the party?
Jevons comes out on the main stage, mate.
Somebody smash that mic immediately.
Did you go Boomtown last summer? No way. Oh, me too, bro.
Let's talk about the film.
Okay.
Let's get back to the film.
Yeah, I it's bro, no way. I went as well. Broski. Do you like to party? So anyway, Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah, it's touching. See, again, the plot. It didn't need that. I think one of the weird things is the plot isn't that obvious. Like, there isn't that much of a plot, and I actually quite enjoyed that at the time. Not for everyone. I know a lot of people they really need a good plot to sink their teeth into, but it was just very serene as a movie. That's the best way I can put it. Like, eerie but serene and relaxing, and just, I don't know. You just felt that sense of wonder that you get from fantasy that Jamie's perfectly put. Why Studio Ghibli is so doing it. That things that are so, it's not like we're so used to so many common fantasy tropes. I think ever since Tolkien and stuff like that, where like a lot of fantasy is either the sci-fi or the medieval kind of stuff. It's very like predictable and everything's working off something from the past. But Studio Ghibli almost just chucks things in there that just, this castle we're looking at, for example. There's I don't think you can really compare it to any other previous film.
The details insane.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
But that like as we said before, that goes across all their films.
Yeah.
Like the intricacy and all the different
and again,
frames is crazy.
You just wait.
You wait
till we start talking about Spirited Away.
Of course.
My God.
I just.
My God.
It really blew my mind as to what an animated film could be. Very different to the kind of home comfort, moral teaching Disney Pixar films that I love. This was just like an adventure into something completely new, and I really enjoyed it for that. I think it being made in a different country really helps with that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Far away
anime's got such a different take on stuff. Which is really refreshing sometimes.
Yeah.
Wonderful for that.
Yeah, thank you. There we go.
There he goes.
Jacques.
Number two.
Right. Number two for me is a much more stripped back reasoning than both of your number twos, but it's going back to something we spoke about before, Josh. Just this is, of these animated films, the one that emotionally I watch and sort of connects and resonates with me most. Partly on a nostalgia front, but partly on the themes within it are pretty moving, I think, in a number of ways. And that's Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, you mentioned that.
Great.
Lilo and Stitch.
When I mentioned that we were going to be doing this podcast on animated films in my house, and I live for listeners who don't know us as well.
For the Albion boys.
Yeah, for listeners who don't know us as well, I live in a separate house to Josh and Jack, and my house there was some vocal admiration for Lilo and Stitch when this topic came about. It's got some serious fans around Nottingham, clearly. But I'm excited to hear your reasoning.
Yeah, mate. It's
I'm gonna grab some water.
Like I was saying, to go to the
beer, please. Joshua.
Waiter.
Oh, would you like
a hobgoblin, if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, absolutely, sir.
No, as in I'm still drinking this, but a hobgoblin. Please.
We'll finish that one first.
But you can bring me a hobgoblin whilst I finish this.
Jamie, can we go to the left of the mic a little bit, okay?
Right, left of the mic. Okay.
You watch yourself. Okay.
Right. Joshua Evans has just threatened me.
The finger wags come out, mate.
He's finger wagged me on audio. Let that be recorded well.
Honestly.
God, I'm terrified.
Wait, what? Yeah, I remember. So nostalgia-wise, I loved it when I was younger. Like of all the sort of Disney films when I was younger, this is what I remember. I was a massive fan of. The other ones that stand out are Emperor's New Groove, as mentioned before, but I was slightly older. I was a big fan of the Disney Peter Pan when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's
But Lilo and Stitch was one that when I was younger, I absolutely loved watching. I watched it a lot. I'm pretty sure there was a TV show at one point, and I'm pretty sure I remember watching the TV show quite a lot too. But the film, I think, is standout, and I watched it back recently. I say recently, during, I don't know, before this year at uni started anyway, but not too long ago, within 2020 at least.
Yeah.
And when I watched it back, I was really like some of the themes that are, as a child, are still moving in some way. So obviously being Stitch, being an alien from outer space, is such a big, like, overblown concept that you didn't think you'd be able to connect with. But the whole thing is, he comes to Earth and he's reading, like, the Ugly Duckling book. About being the odd one out, like he's the odd one out on Earth.
He gets rooted in that.
Yeah, exactly. And they make they give an alien character such human elements, which I think is something Josh might go on to with his number one pick. But to humanise a character in that way.
You don't know what my number one pick is.
I know what your number one
Shut
pick is.
your goddamn mouth.
It's definitely Paul. I mean, I can tell already it's Paul.
He just breaks down.
Let's not beat around the bush
down
about
at Paul.
this. It's Paul. Sorry, carry on, Jack.
But no. Stitch himself.
Simon Pegg's just so good.
Breaks down at
It's just such an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, pull that up. Oh, no, that's not. What the hell are you doing?
Pull that up. Thank you very much.
Anyway,
Anyway.
Let's carry on.
Yeah, Stitch himself is such a, like, lovable character. And it's like, completely forgotten to watch it recently. Like, Stitch is like an intergalactic criminal, effectively. Like, he's an escaped prison convict from his planet. He's like I can't remember if he's like a lab experiment or something, but basically the point is he escapes from whatever, like, alien planet he's on before, and arrives on Earth, and then the whole point is there's aliens that come from that planet to try and hunt him down and get him because he's a criminal, or he's an escapee or whatever. But the way he connects with Lilo, because Lilo is struggling with relationships in terms of, like, friends and things at the time. Like, she's at a point in her life where she's struggling with those kind of things, and Stitch comes in as an outsider too, and, like, the connection they form on screen is just, like, amazing.
Yeah, just looking at these screen grabs there, like them dancing in the little what's it called, the leaf kind of skirt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I can't think.
It's a beautiful aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's set in Hawaii, or it's.
It gives me
that kind of.
If you don't mind me shouting out one that's a definite honourable mention for me, and something of a Disney cliche I feel in recent years. Very Moana vibes, and I think Moana is a fantastic film. A criminally, I feel like because of its recency, criminally underrated.
I couldn't get
Moana is not underrated.
Most people like it.
I don't know. I think Moana did pretty
I think
well.
it did well, like, box office. It did fantastic box office.
Decent.
I think
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
I think the songs in it are some of the. It's one of the strongest.
There are some good
songs. It's one of the strongest, like, sets of songs I've heard from Disney in actually years, since Tangled, definitely. Tangled is a great song.
I've not actually seen Tangled.
Tangled is a great film. Tangled would have also been somewhere.
Really?
Maybe edging on the top 10. It wouldn't have been top 5. It would have been edging my top 10.
An honourable
mention.
mention.
Yeah, so deep into the honourable mention, it would have been Tangled. But it's very Moana vibes, but it's very sort of Moana sort of laid bare, taken back to this
search setting. See if it's. I feel I feel like it's Hawaii. Just search Lilo and Stitch setting. I don't know if it's Hawaii or somewhere like that, but
I have a vague memory that might have been, but my memory of this film is bad. So
no, search put setting.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't really matter. We don't really need to. But have you guys both seen it?
I have when I was much younger.
You haven't.
Not for a long time.
I used to watch the series a bit.
Yeah,
but
I've definitely seen the series. I have seen the film as well, but
Kansas.
That does not look like rural
the setting
Kansas.
was changed to Hawaii. Yeah.
Okay. Rural Kansas. What?
Well, that's where they wanted it to take place.
Yeah.
Mate, you haven't seen. Oh, we'll have to watch this. Josh, you'll like this.
Okay.
And you may cry, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the homies.
I remember it being quite an emotional film.
It is, and it's more. This one's interesting because it's emotional. I find when I find a film really emotional, it tends to be as it's building towards the end that the emotion really kicks in. This film is kind of emotional quite early on, and then the ending's more sort of fun and like a bit more actiony, kind of intense. But the emotional elements are introduced quite early, which I think is something slightly different. And catch you a bit off guard sometimes.
Those themes of being an outsider, I think, are really important for kids as well.
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
You imagine school, just going back. Like,
exactly, and that's the school thing is exactly what Lilo kind of is dealing with within the film. I mean, you'll see if we watch it.
Just like in Wreck-It Ralph.
I'd love to watch it again.
Brings it back round to Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah,
in a way, all films kind of stem from the same things that make Wreck-It Ralph what it is. Don't you think?
Wreck-It Ralph was a seminal moment in film.
My thoughts exactly, James.
It was a seminal moment. It was fantastic.
Anyway, yeah, it's a film I have a very personal connection to.
I love that.
And that's why. Yeah. So until recently, until I last watched it, I would have always put The Emperor's New Groove as my top Disney film. But the last time I watched it, I think because I'd got quite a lot older since the time previously that I'd watched it. The nostalgia was a big factor. Really reminded me of when I was younger, and just like connected and understood the themes like sort of perhaps a bit better than I had done previously.
Yeah.
And so I moved that above Emperor's New Groove as a more comic film. I put the more personal one slightly above it, but obviously I really like both of them.
Yeah, I think that's a good way.
But it does also, as all Disney films do, it has comic relief at parts. Like Stitch in himself is just such a like chaotic character. Like he causes absolute carnage when he arrives on Earth. And that's funny, his whole like energy, which is the word
intergalactic criminal, and I think that sums up the man sitting right in front of us a little bit as well. Jimbles King, intergalactic criminal.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with me.
Oh my god.
I like utilising the ASMR elements of the podcast.
I hope everybody's okay.
Of course.
To full effect. It's something I take great pleasure in.
YouTube just removes the video after that.
Yeah. It was
banned.
I pissed myself whilst saying it, so I can't imagine what the viewers at home will be how they'll be feeling when they encounter that little soundbite.
Jamie, not on my carpet, please.
Goodness gracious.
Anyway, yeah, that's 2 for me. So we've arrived
at the number one.
At the number one, the numero.
My goodness, we've got to really sell these. We've got to sell these bad boys.
The funny thing now is I think we all know what each other.
I think we all know everyone.
I think mine is quite clear at this point.
Well, mine is quite clear also.
Yeah, I
know his, but I don't know if you'll know his.
I don't know what Josh's is, so I'm excited to hear that.
Viewers, I'm the only surprise left. So.
Well, I know it.
To me, you're a surprise to me, and we're all surprised to you.
Are you a goddamn viewer?
Well, no, but they're all. Well, maybe not actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, sorry, no.
That's right, mate.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, I'll take it back.
Be that as it may.
Fair play.
Sorry, Jack, I didn't mean to get here.
That's all right, mate.
Okay. The microphone kind of brings it out.
It's okay.
It's an emotive topic. It's an emotive topic.
Jamie, shut up.
Have a Bakewell. Chill out. We'll all be all right.
Okay, I'll have a Bakewell.
Have a Bakewell. And should I take it?
You get.
I just can't take any more.
You had a lot of sugar. It's been a lot of sugar for Josh.
Anyway, no, you go ahead.
I'm just going to say my number one. And my number one, to those who haven't worked out already, is Spirited Away. Spirited Away is... And there might be a bit of recency bias here, I'll admit, because I watched it early this week and I've maybe watched it maybe 4 times. So definitely fewer than Coco, but the next most on my list of 5.
The pigs, man.
Spirited Away, kind
of scary.
So it's Studio Ghibli, and much as I was saying with Studio Ghibli before, it takes this similar kind of arc of being initially grounded in our world, in reality, that I could speak for some time on the shots that make that happen, and the artistic choices, the way that they frame the landscape in the early parts of the film. Grounds it beautifully in reality, and then takes you so far away from that. Takes you as far as you could ever conceptually go. I feel like it really does. And I don't say that lightly. It's not an arbitrary thing that I'm saying there. It takes you as far as you could possibly go from reality without breaking the illusion of reality.
If
that makes sense.
No, it does, mate.
If that makes sense.
This scared me shitless.
It is scary. It's incredibly scary.
The bit at the start where the parents turn into pigs, is that not if I'd watched that when I was younger,
incredibly scary.
If I watched that when I was younger, I really would not have liked that.
And I did watch it. I watched
that.
I watched Spirited Away for the first time when I must have been maybe 11 or 12. Yeah. And the scene at the start, and to viewers, without trying to spoil much, obviously the parents take a turn for the worse. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many spoilers on this.
Yeah, spoiler alert: the parents turn into pigs, and it is incredibly freaky.
It broke my heart.
Freaky.
Yeah.
I think I cried at that.
And it is genuinely quite distressing, and it's just the way that world is constructed, the way that Chihiro, who is the main protagonist, and she is, honestly, I think one of the best female protagonists in terms of the construction of character. I think she is a genuinely pioneering female protagonist, and I love her for that reason. I think it's fantastic. I think she's a fantastic character. She has to weather this storm at the start of the film of. She's a normal girl in a normal world. She gets put into this extraordinary world. And she fights against it. She wants her parents to go back to their car. She wants them to run away. And they won't. She's dragged unceremoniously into this world that is not for her. It's a spirit world where the idea of being human, the very smell, and it's a really cool motif that they use, the idea of the smell of being human, the smell of the character. Later on, the smell of the stench spirit, the stink spirit who comes in. The idea of smell, which is something. So it's not that particular character. We're looking at an image of No Face to viewers who are familiar with the film.
Is he the one that makes? There's that thing that eating everything. I just remember
that is No Face. That is No Face.
That's
the stench spirit comes in before No Face.
Right. Okay.
And there's this idea that smell is something you have no control over. You know what I mean? It's something that I feel people are kind of so conscious but uncontrolling of. You don't smell is quite an ethereal sort of
it's not
out there thing.
It's not a sense that you use every day, but not necessarily consciously. Yeah. Until you come across a smell that's particularly strong.
It's an interesting sense to use in such an important way in film.
That's a good point.
A really interesting one. And so the smell of being human is damning. The smell of being disgusting is damning. And there's all these physical sort of elements of the characters, these manifestations of the physical elements of the characters, I should say, which are so telling in the film.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful how they draw out the character of Chihiro through her interaction with this world that's not for her.
Going back to the smell thing, what I really got from it, again, I've never seen this all the way through actually. Part of it was a mixture of me falling asleep while being really scared.
Naturally.
What bit were you scared at?
The pigs. The pigs.
The pigs. It's so freaky.
5 minutes.
It's so freaky.
But it is scary.
To be fair, I would say it's a lot further in than you think. When I rewatched it,
I've only seen it one time.
There's so much. It's nearly half an hour into the film.
How long is it? Is it quite long?
It's just under 2 hours. It might be just.
Oh wow! So that's a significant. But
it's
what is that? Them driving to the
There's a massive extent of time of them driving through the normal human world.
Yeah.
Then the thing that takes up more time than you remember is when Chihiro and her parents. So it's this small family who's exploring.
There's that tunnel they go
world.
through.
So they walk through a tunnel, which is the barrier between the human and spirit worlds, essentially. And then they go and explore the spirit world, not knowing what exactly it is that they are exploring. And that sequence it's a good 10 or 15 minutes, and it's a very important 10 or 15 minutes in the film, one which is loaded with stuff, loaded with sort of with symbolism, with dialogue that is incredibly pertinent later on in the film.
Okay,
it's a very
be interesting on a rewatch.
It's forgettable in a way that feels intentional, if that makes sense.
Okay, it's a good way of phrasing it.
It fades in the greater context of the film. But when you rewatch
it lays important foundations in the context of the story.
You can appreciate the gravity of that 10 or 15 minute sequence.
Excellently put, Jamie.
It's wonderful. It's fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Just going back to that fear factor, the thing with the smell and the stench of being human, I think what was really interesting and what really discomforted me is it almost flips the human kind of, the human control over the wild world. So, you know, we like domesticate animals and like we're the ones who like, you know, you're a pig, you're stinky. I could have put that a lot better.
Well said.
Burn.
You are a pig, you are stinky. Guess
I'm just looking at these pictures and Jamie, you're making me tremble, mate, with your wordsmithing. But
no, shut up, mate.
But the way, get off my kneecap.
I'm not on your kneecap, mate.
But but the way it makes. So we talked about the being an other and stuff like that. But this is different. It's like it turns the human into the rodent and the foreign outsider in the spirit world, where they're not the most powerful being anymore. So in our world, we're very used to being the ones that, like, if something goes wrong, we've still got a gun. I don't know, that's a really weird way to put it, but you know what I mean? But in this world, like, these are powerful spirit beings. Yeah. And she's
nothing works.
Yeah, nothing works.
That she knows.
Yeah, exactly. And she's just a little girl, and the fact that she's like, she's vermin to some of these people because she's a human. I think that's a really interesting perspective that you, again, couldn't do with something that wasn't animated.
Yeah. What I would say, and the thing that I found, this is probably like the most interesting thing that I found about this film, and the thing that I found
Magnum opus incoming, boys.
Yeah, it's really remarkable is how, you're right, like Chihiro is a human. Fundamentally, she is a human.
That's the point.
Cast into a world.
That's the point,
ladies and gentlemen.
And
we got
so my favourite film.
Number one. Yeah. She's a human passed into this world that is not hers, and she has to go and find a job. That's like one of the main. That's one of the key sort of narrative plot points of the film. She has to get a job there.
Oh, the guy with all the legs.
With all the Kamachi, who has like 8 arms and stuff. So she has to go and find a job, and then she gets kind of promoted in her job and stuff like that, and she grows into this role, but it's a world that is so fundamentally not for her.
Yeah.
And the thing that's incredible about this film, the thing that really touches home, is how you go through this journey with Chihiro. Like, you follow her this entire way. You're attached to her shoulder in that sense that she's your vehicle of experiencing the events of the film. But she learns at a faster rate than you do. And this is something that's, I think, incredibly unique to not necessarily Studio Ghibli generally, but this film manifests this in a way that's I haven't ever seen in another film. You are travelling with this protagonist, and you are, when I watch it, and I've watched this film 4 times, I feel lost. I feel lost when I watch this film.
Yeah.
The narrative is disjointed.
Well, there's so much going on.
There's so much going on, and so much that is not connected. Stuff is not connected. You have a half an hour sequence in the middle of the film almost, which is about, as I spoke on before, this stink spirit, which comes into the bathhouse which Chihiro works in,
and that's where I started watching.
In the spirit world, and there's a long process of like this spirit being in the bathhouse and then departing. And it's got plot relevance, but not that much.
It's stuff so that can be immersed in these different episodes. They're almost like episodes of when I think of the film, I think of. So we mentioned the guy with the guy with all the arms, like that's a whole sequence, and there were the little dust spider things, whatever they are, run out on.
Absolutely.
There's another bit that sticks out particularly is when she's out on like that shallowish water waiting for the train towards the end.
I'm going to speak on that.
You're coming onto that.
I'm going to speak on that heavily,
but the point is there's all these different episodes that you get so immersed in within the film that you forget you're watching. Maybe not forget, that's the wrong word, but like you're so involved in these particular episodes that then when it switches, you're like, oh wow, like I was in.
Mate, it's beautifully done. That's a great way.
And it does all link together. It does all link together though. That's the whole point.
Fantastic. But and the way that it's linked together is always so almost arbitrary, almost sort of
chaotic,
unnecessary and unusual, unexpected maybe. That that you don't follow the story, and this is maybe the really functional thing, the thing that's so fantastic about how it's portrayed as a whole narrative. You don't follow it as well as Chihiro does. So your protagonist, Chihiro, she settles into this idea of working in the spirit world. She becomes comfortable with that idea before you as a viewer do.
Well, I think
she's comfortable
maybe part
with
of
that.
the childlike
Exactly.
innocence. Like,
it's her childlike, her malleability. She is capable of becoming a part of the spirit world, becoming an employee of this bathhouse that caters to people. I say the word people as if that people has some significance in this film, because people here are spirits and she's not a spirit. She
exactly.
isn't even a person, one of the people in this film. She is the other.
Yeah.
And yet she settles in quicker than we can as viewers. She settles into each stage of that narrative. Jack, you were exactly right in calling them episodes almost. Every time we see that happen, she becomes comfortable before we can. And so we respect her. Like my admiration for her is probably the best word for it.
Yeah.
But by the time we're halfway through the film, I admire her. I'm like, her ability to weather the storms of what she's experiencing is convincing, it's compelling, but it's also exceptionally beyond what I could imagine myself doing when I watch
which is
the film.
important for a protagonist.
It makes her one of, I think, the most fantastic protagonists in almost any film I think I've ever watched. I could say that. I think, and it's so impressive because she doesn't have that many lines. She's not that like animated films. It's not like she's.
Have you seen Austin Powers?
I have seen Austin Powers.
Is he up there as a protagonist?
He is. I say it's 1A 1B. It's tight at the top. Between Chihiro and Austin Powers, it's seriously tight at the top.
There couldn't be a podcast that you didn't.
See, I wanted to let
shoehorn it in the most unnecessary way.
Look,
possible.
I was pretty good last episode, and I was
not
pretty good this
references.
episode.
Well, you haven't made references, but.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me have that. Sorry, Jamie. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. That's so
it's so fun.
Interrupted the
man's
flow.
It was a necessary interruption. An absolutely necessary.
Necessary is a strong word.
But just to wrap it up, I feel like that's one of the things that stays with me most about this film is how remarkable Chihiro feels, because she embeds herself into this world so much more readily, so much more capably than we can imagine ourselves doing that. And she takes up what I mentioned before about this magic realism of Studio Ghibli, this blending of the grounded in reality, but also so much further beyond what our reality, like what we can comprehend as ever being reality. She copes with that extension, that reach far better than we can imagine any human being ever doing.
Yeah.
And so she is incredible as a protagonist. There's so many narrative elements to the story that I think are brilliant and beautiful and fantastic.
Well, mate, I'm sure.
I won't speak on all of them at length, but one other thing that I particularly love about this film, something that we mentioned before with reference to animation in particular, is the score. The score is incredible.
So I've only seen it once. I can't remember the score that distinctly.
It is. I mean, but, I implore you and all listeners.
What's the kind of like fantastical type?
It's fantastical. I'd say
if there's a main theme or something.
What I particularly recommend is the scene where, and this is
what's he doing on the screen?
Kronk is on the screen. Kronk is on the screen. I repeat, Kronk is on the screen. Yeah, the scene where they're travelling along this railway, which is just sort of thinly veiled by water.
I remember that scene really. That's one of the scenes that stands out in my memory. Actually.
And the visuals are absolutely incredible. We have some
piano cover,
some audio.
We don't want a cover, mate. We want the actual.
You want the bit over the water.
If you just search the scene. I'm sure it'll come up, but wait, is that a spirit?
I don't know what it would be.
That's the lo-fi beats to study / relax to. Just
goodness gracious. Either way, it's fantastic and it's absolutely beautiful. When the scenes are illustrated fantastically, they are. So some of them are. Wow, some of the stills are purely artwork. They are absolute artwork.
Let's go through some of them here. That one. and the train is very beautiful. Yeah, I remember the grandma. The
yeah.
grandma is what actually freaked me out the most.
She is quite...
Look how big her head is.
She is quite an intimidating
character.
And
she's a dual character, so that's a twin. So there's two characters who look exactly the same. Yubaba, who's like the main antagonist of the story, and her twin, who I can't remember the name of
when
now.
she goes to meet the other
But she
twin.
travels on this train
long way away
to
the
meet
train,
the
That's towards the back end, isn't it, that she meets the other characters?
Towards the back end.
See, that's what's good, that it can introduce characters that late that have such an important role in the story, and
that is one of the things that gives us this magic realism, is that you are introduced to characters, to spaces, and to ideas even. So when Chihiro travels down this train track to go and meet this character, she's greeted initially, and this is late on in the story, her welcome party almost, as she visits this entirely new space to us as viewers and to her as a protagonist. Her greeting party is this. It's a lamp spirit, so it's a spirit that bounces on one leg, on one foot, and is at the top basically a street light. And it bounces around and leads her to where she has to go. And we're introduced to this spirit, which is unlike any spirit we've seen before in the story. This is 3/4 of the way through the film almost.
Yeah.
And it's an entirely new kind of spirit, an entirely new kind of character, which clearly has personality. It's animated with personality and with charisma, but is an inanimate object, and we haven't seen that before in the story, really. And so it gives this sense that there's more to this world than we understand. There's more going on here. There's more things that are possible than we have seen so far. And it's that kind of impression, and it's built and then fortified throughout the story, that really gives spirit to the way. It's sense of realism, for one thing, it being grounded in the real world from the start and then again at the close of the story. But also, it's real wonder. Like you watch the film and you think, what is the boundary of this world that's being created? You have no idea. Like, I watch it and I have no idea what Miyazaki, who's the guy he's pseudo going to be director at this point. He's sadly, like, the late Miyazaki, he's died recently.
What a legacy, though.
Yeah, fantastic legacy. And it gives you this sense of like what was possible in his mind, in the mind of the people who created this, and it's really remarkable. It's a fantastic film to watch with that in mind, with the idea of what the possibilities of this world are. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Fantastically animated. The score is impeccable. It's a lovely film. The score matches to the action so well. Like, beat by beat, you'll see scene changes, actions of the characters. Like, their movements will line up to the beat and to the score, and it's fantastic to watch. It's really really artistic. It's fantastically artistic, and I love it, and I will watch it regularly till I die.
There you go.
Sips Hobgoblin.
A sip of Hobgoblin.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. I was riding the wave for a little bit.
No, mate, that's why I didn't want to say it.
When it's your number one spot, mate, you're more than entitled to ride the wave.
I'm excited to hear yours.
For a man so you wait.
Quite a change up.
For a man so eloquent, I just wanted to let you carry on. That I think I love hearing you speak about something you're passionate about, and that it's been building up to that, obviously, and fist bump, and
fist bump, much appreciated.
And I think it's a very special movie that I need to go back to and finish. And what I will say is, and this is why I love this podcast, is I can't remember the details of the film exactly, but everything you've said and also what you've chimed in with as well has resonated with me in a way that I remember how the film made me feel. But not what was actually happening the whole time. And I think that's the beauty of these different films, that everybody has their own personal interpretation, but there's some things that, like, they really hit everybody the same way.
Of course.
You can preserve the narrative but still get the feel of it.
Yeah, because
lovely.
Feel, and speaking of...
It's lovely.
Lovely.
Speaking about feel
fantastic.
Here we go.
I'm gonna go on to my number one.
Oh mate, it's such a good film. I'm glad that we're talking about this because I was worried that we might not.
I've seen it once a long time ago. I can't remember it.
Really, I watched it fairly recently, and I loved it. It was probably my number 6.
Wow,
ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Well, please.
I give you my number one.
Ahead.
Wally. I thought that was pretty good. Come on.
Christ alive! What the fuck was
Oh.
I'm going to piss myself.
That was Wally. For those of you who didn't get that.
Probably gathered.
I'll give you. So again, animated films. Just now we're at the zenith. Is that the right word, or is it nadir? Where the fuck are you going?
I really need to piss now.
He's gotta go again.
I'm gonna be so quick.
He's interrupting his word. He's interrupting the flow.
But I'll be back.
He's interrupting.
Okay, that's fine.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, no, he's really gone. Thank fuck. Again, with animated films, loads of them have been really special to me. So many honourable mentions that I think now that I've hit my number one, I'll just go through them now. Robots. Robots with Aunt Fatty.
Haven't seen that in a long time.
And a lot of the James Brown music from Robots. Great film. Emperor's New Groove was on there. The Incredibles, Inside Out.
Incredibles does deserve a shout. It seems harsh that we haven't brought up The Incredibles.
It's a huge film. It's tough, but I think we made the point that these are very personal films. I think
It's a great film.
Incredibles is up there in terms of, I don't know, again, it's a very difficult discussion to talk about objectivity, but Incredibles is actually flawless, the first film. Other honourable mentions are the weirder side of Disney films, Treasure Planet, Atlantis.
I've seen that a long time ago.
Really, really on the weird side of Disney films that I absolutely loved. But again, I haven't really paid attention to animated films in terms of which ones have hit me personally. So this list was a bit recent. But I was back home and my dad just put a film on in the kitchen, and that film was Wall-E, and just minding my business, studying the day, blah blah blah. Walk past it, just the film's on. I watched like 5 minutes of it, and the tears are coming in my eyes, and I'm literally like, bro, like with a capital B, like how is a film having this effect on me so quickly? And it just reminded me how good animated films are at this, at drawing emotion out that we've all talked about. Just because the fact that it's so abstract, I think it's a lot easier to relate to, and that's something I'm going to get into with this film. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to have to rewatch this because I always loved everything, like the plot of the film. It's very, very unique and very, very important in my opinion. But I rewatched it last night, and to go back to the blubbing, last night I held my own, just chilling in my room on my laptop for most of an hour. A couple of scenes were a bit, like emotional, like teary eyed. And it's not that overtly emotional film, but it's the notes it does strike just ring out with such resonance.
Yeah.
That it really connects with me, and hopefully I think a lot of other people. But I got to maybe 2/3 of the way through the film, and then this morning I woke up, did my little routine, did a bit of Italian on the phone, and read the news. I'm joking. I went on Snapchat and read the news, but then I put the film back on, and literally within seconds of starting it again in the morning, I was just blubbing. It's just such mate. You're walking on my bed like some spirited animal. Spirited away.
Spirited animal. He kept the shoes off. It's alright.
Spirited animal.
Yeah,
Jamie,
that's what they call it.
I've just been talking about. I watched Wall-E last night, and the blubbing just came, and just because it's so well made.
It's the film for it.
So I'm gonna go in a bit more detail. I've talked enough about just blubbing. But what some of the dimensions I think this film really excels at, and dimension number one I think is the plot, and the world it's set in. So Wall-E is about a almost post-apocalyptic future of the human race, where it's very very Blade Runner-esque actually. But with a very different kind of
interesting
appeal. No, but it is because it's one corporation has taken over the world, and also we've kicked ourselves off planet Earth. The opening image is of planet Earth, dusty, grey, recognizable, but just scattered and surrounded by orbiting trash. And it's just, especially these days, where people are getting a lot more conscious. Remember, this film came out like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Of the impact we're having on our environment. It just really propels us into the future, into what a world could be looking like in the distant distant dystopian setting. And we kind of pan into this New York City, or Chicago maybe, but where we've got this lonely robot, just cheery, chirpy, just doing his job, collecting trash, and the whole plot of the film is the humankind, what's left of it, is on this cruise, this intergalactic cruise, and it's just full of decadence. Is that the right word I'm looking for? Just everybody's so lazy.
I think that's appropriate.
Capitalism taken to the extreme of just everybody's lazing around in this automated world. Automation is a big part of it, and it's very kind of it does this very socially conscious message without pushing it in a way that, because it's lighthearted. It's not preachy, but it makes you think about this stuff, and I think that's so subtly done for a kids movie, an animated kids movie, and the whole plot, spoilers, revolves around this one bit of this one plant that's found on Earth by this robot Eve was sent from this cruise, and Wally gets back on with Eve, gets taken back to the cruise, and the whole point is they try and get the cruise back to Earth, but the automation systems try and prevent that from happening, because that's what they were coded to do.
She's called Eve, is she?
Like,
yeah.
Adam and...
Yeah, but it stands for environmental...
I can't remember.
Like valuation...
right.
Environmental survey... I don't know. Evaluated. Like, it stands for something, Eve. But it like, just, Eve, like, there's already so much behind that. The Garden of Eden. And there's
of course.
The whole, the ending of the film, I'll get into a bit more later, brings back these very biblical things, because they're restarting humanity. And for something about such a dark topic, it takes it with a real lightheartedness. So the second dimension I want to go into is the robots and the automation, and this is linked into a very big point about animated films in general that we've been beating around for quite a while. I particularly have, which is, I'm going to use this word distill again, because I think animated films are so good at being moving, because they really distill a lot of what it means to be human by putting it on non-human things.
Yeah,
absolutely. And by the freedom to, something I was talking about with Corbin earlier was body language, and I've mentioned it a little bit here. But Wally as a robot is so expressive, and I think the fact that most of the main characters are robots. There's a few human characters, but they're on the back seat to the parade of robotic people, and I think there's something very poetic about making robots really human and with a lot of personality, because it's something that it shouldn't have. It's just an automated little thing. But when you give them, when you watch a robot act in a strange way that's like a human, it really makes you realize what being a human is, because it's put onto something that you don't see. That I don't know how to phrase this. It's put onto something foreign that shouldn't act like a human, and then when you see how it is acting human, it's a mirror that I think is really beautiful.
It's subtlety again.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, and it's something that honestly, like, without wanting to
go.
Repeat you particularly, but something that I actually hadn't really recognised in Wally until you just kind of mentioned it at all. Like, I really hadn't thought about this in relation to Wally at all. But subtlety is it's a really important part of how it sort of imposes its narrative and how it imposes the form of the film onto you. Like, there is such a remarkable subtlety in how it changes the idea of what it is to be human. This robot who is entirely human versus these humans who are so later on in the film who are so non-human to us, who feel so so distinctly different from our idea of what it is to be human.
Yeah,
our
definitely.
idea to be active and to be like, you know, a part of our world. They are not a part of our world because they're removed from it by millions of miles, like millions of actual figurative miles, and by generations of that point as well.
Yes.
And so it's the word you used before, subtlety, it's a word that really kind of made some of that click for me in a way that just now that it hadn't done previously for Wall-E. I'm grateful to that word that you just used, because I hadn't thought about that in relation to Wall-E before. The fact that there is this distance that is created so subtly, and that is the only word for it. It's so subtly.
I think that's one of the reasons why it's my favourite, is because there's a lot going on under the surface, which is why I've got my pickaxe out. And
absolutely.
Thanks for bringing up the human point.
Subtlety is so important in this film, and it's a great thing to point out, because I hadn't thought about it before, but it's a fantastic motif to identify.
But this particular dimension that you reminded me about with the humans, about I think I mentioned this in the original top 10 one, but I think one of the most important things of literature, film, any kind of story is you're getting at what it means to be human. The things we talked about before are different themes of being lost, what it means to be an outsider, what it means family, kind of dealing with your ego, like we talked about with other stuff. But this really hammers at that humanity with the robotic, the robotic content really. And like you said, there's this brilliant juxtaposition between the humans, the quote unquote humans, who are just like, they're almost, because everything's automated around them, their lives are completely automated. They drink their food out of a carton, and it's done so quickly because it's a short film, but like every scene just tells you so much. They have all these adverts about this BNL like corporation, and there's this little part where like there's this advert that's like, they all wear red, and then they go, blue is the new red, and they all go, oh, I'll try that, and they press a button, and they're wearing blue, and it's like they haven't. There's no joy in that whatsoever, because it's become at such ease, and it's really interesting when you think about these days, the ease with which we're getting consumerist goods, and like how that kind of takes away from some of the joy of getting that good in the first place.
Yeah,
when was this made?
That's very true.
2007.
Yeah, 8 does that sound?
Yeah, mate.
7,
It's way ahead of its time.
Yeah, very ahead of its time in that.
Again,
it's a great point.
Very really Blade Runner-ish, but all careful. Hobgoblin down, mate.
Hobgoblin. We'll mop it up.
Get some. Hang on, I'll get some.
It is.
That's fine.
This is barely a splash. Sir.
It's on the notebook as well.
To our listeners,
You're so excited.
I was so excited by this talk of Wall-E that I disrupted the uprightness of my Hobgoblin can. It's probably the best way of putting it.
That's fine, mate, don't worry.
I may have turned it sideways inadvertently, and so there's been a small amount of Hobgoblin.
Unfortunately, we've got a bit of gravity to deal with on this planet, unlike they do up there. But
it's a very small amount of Hobgoblin. It's gone sideways.
You might as well mop it.
I will mop it up, of course.
There's a lot of content to go through, so it's alright if I keep on breezing through. Plowing through. I'm still on this dimension of
We're still going on Wall-E.
Jack.
Maybe no. I'm saying go ahead.
How dare you?
No. That's not what I mean at all.
The other
please go ahead.
The other the main thing that really stuck out for me is in this dimension of the humanity and the contrast with the robots and stuff like that is there's a scene towards the end, spoilers, where like Wall-E he's been broken down quite a lot by the challenges of trying to get everybody to Earth with Eve, his romantic interest and also best friend that he makes in the film. And there's a point where earlier on in the film, their relationship, another thing about them being human, Wall-E's just love struck by this. Eve is such an elegant robot. She's this beautiful white and the.
Oh, are they in love?
Yeah, mate. And
that's jokes.
Only a little bit, but this picture here early on, like there's a bit where.
That's quite nice.
Wall-E is just hopelessly like obsessed with this thing, and his eyes, they're like little glasses. He's like the nerdy little bot. It's brilliant. And there's a part where he brings her in and tries showing her this really old 50s movie of the dancing and stuff. And Wall-E's just like, he's got this dustbin that he's pretending is a hat, and he's like performing for her, and it's so endearing because it's just so it's just so cute. But
I'll have to admit, I literally haven't watched it.
It's a great film.
I can't remember literally any of
But
this.
I just think little details like that,
ages.
it's saying so much with just the little animation time they have. And there's a big part of the film where there's a part in the video he's watching where the things hold hands. The people and the music's playing, and Wally looks at it and like puts his hands, the robotic hands together, and they just clasp, and he's kind of saying like, I want to have that. There's also almost no dialogue from the robots. There's some from the humans, but all this emotion is getting expressed just by the gestures, which is why I think it's great. It's number one for me animation wise, because it's really using animation as a way to tell story and character. And going back to this other point, towards the end of the film, the whole film is Wally trying to kind of grab Eve's hand as a little motif of like connection and what it means to be human, connecting with someone else. We are social beings and all that. And there's a point towards the end where Wally is broken down and Eve like is rushing and she's worried about him, and the lights in her eyes are really conveying her distress. And Wally, like, she puts him, fix him back together again, but he doesn't work as Wally. He's just the robot, because there's many other versions like Wally, but they're all dead and deceased on planet Earth, which again adds to the loneliness. But he's just a robot, and then he starts acting like a robot. He literally just goes and picks up like the trash and puts it back in, and there's a square, and none of the expression is in his movements anymore. And that's brilliant because it contrasts with the rest of the film, and it shows you what they're doing with the animation style and the expressions. The humanness doesn't just come from the thing there. It's how he moves, it's how he expresses himself. And there's a moment where Eve puts her hand out into his, and Wally just like slowly, like his hand just moves a little bit, and just these three metallic things just like clink and hold it, and he looks up and his eyes like do this little dance thing. And it's just such a poetic way to like display connection between two people. And
it's wonderful, it's wonderful.
And the last dimension I'll just go into is the way, I think I've touched on it with that, but the way they save humanity. Sorry, the last dimension is actually just the visual part of it. It's
glorious.
It's so artistic.
It's so lovely. No, it's the word for it.
It's such a feast for the eyes. But there's a part where they're in space and Wally goes in, and there's these beautiful pink nebulas, and there's this part here where he's riding on something, and they go through these Saturn rings, and he's just
for the time as well.
Yeah.
When you think this is over 10 years ago, this is more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, that looks like that's a Bruce Almighty.
It was really impressive. Like watching it more recently, I've been like, damn, that is sick animation.
There's a lot
the stuff they did looks so good. It looks so good.
Just like we've already mentioned, the artistic side of it, and the whole story of the humans coming back to Earth. Excuse me. The ending credits I love, because they come back to Earth, and there's all this comedy about like they don't know what farming is and stuff like that, and the guy's like, guys, we can farm, we can grow pizza and stuff like that, which is very, very kind of making fun of America and stuff like that. That's my one criticism. It is quite heavily American for something that's meant to represent the whole Earth, but letting that slide for what most of cinema is like. The whole ending sequence is very biblical, and the after credit sequence Disney's usually good at, where it's all painted and stuff like that. There's this one, as if the rest of there's lots I haven't gone into, but as if the rest of the film wasn't good enough with this sense of humanity coming through the robots, much like Daft Punk, which recently broke up, unfortunately. But I
loved DP. I don't mean double penetration. Come
on. We made it so far.
We got so far.
But I'll just finish with they have a last little detail in the end credit scene where like they portray the captain. They portray the captain as like in a way that's like Egyptian hieroglyphics, and they have other stuff which is like cave paintings, and they just artistically go over like the restarting of humanity by looking at what our past was like, and it's like my Mona Lisa of animated films.
It's a nice way to come full circle.
Mona Lisa of animated films.
For me, yeah.
Wow.
It's big, but also it's a fantastic film. I understand. I fully understand.
I'll have to rewatch. I don't think I'm in
a position. It's a great film.
I'm not in a position
really beautiful film
to pass judgment, because Probably, I think I've seen it once.
I'm giving it quite a high rate.
It probably was
but
next
mate, that's
up
what we're saying.
my
Even
list.
if we're giving it high praise, it's very personal.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're speaking on it at such length because it clearly has a very personal connection to you.
That was the main film I wanted to talk about. So apologies.
Yeah.
If
No,
I've rambled a bit.
not at all, mate. Not at all. If it's in your number one spot, I think you've got license to.
The relationship between Eve and Wally is so special, I think.
Yeah. Wonderful gender dynamics.
Definitely.
Because
Eve's strong.
Eve being, but also neither of them ever explicitly male or female.
Yeah, true.
So, but you assume, and you're led to assume Wally, the guy, Eve, the girl, in that relationship.
Yeah.
You're led to, but you can see in the framing Eve being physically larger.
She's
Eve
incredibly
being
powerful.
more like appropriately, so like more entwined, more able to explain and aid Wally than Wally is her in social situations, like as they evolve in the sort of in the new kind of the spaceship world that they end up in.
Yeah.
Like the gender dynamics I think are really well done in terms of like there's such a balance of what you expect and then what unfolds.
Yeah. Definitely.
Without any gender ever being necessarily or sort of implicitly imparted onto one or the other. It's really funny that they're robots, and so they give them these characters that you associate with a gender, and then really starts to like kind of invert and twist that.
Yeah.
And so it really gives it gives a fantastic, I think, sort of at the end of the day, like very ungendered kind of relationship to the characters, which I think is really strong and holds up fantastically well in the context of the story. Which I think it's very, in that sense, maybe very ahead of its time almost. As much as you'd hope it ought not be, but it is fantastically advanced in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. I find the film pretty for something that seems so silly, filled with humour. It's pretty transcendent to me in terms of the themes it touches on, and
it's lovely.
The execution of those themes is just flawless.
No, it's fantastic.
There we go.
Fantastic film.
There we go.
I was done.
There we go.
Thank you for attending.
Goodness gracious.
I need to get that out of my system.
No, of course, mate. Of course.
A pretty long pod.
We'll be.
Sorry.
As in like leaving at 11:30 feels irrelevant to me at this point because the conversation has been.
I'm glad.
So goddamn fine. Fine as wine, baby.
I think we're looking at about an hour and a half at the moment.
I think it'll probably be longer than that.
I think it's 2 hours. I think it's a comfortable 2 hours.
Has it been?
It has been.
Oh my god.
But that's entirely fine. As in, if in 2 hours of great content, I hope that you, the listener, agrees.
Most
importantly,
that's all we have time for.
Mr. Jack, must do your number
outro
one.
music. No, okay, banter's over. Jack,
enough. Mine, to be fair, I think we'll be able to wrap up quite quickly. Mine's quite obvious. I've spoken about it on the podcast before. We've mentioned it already today, and it's a film that's within my top 10 films ever, not just animated. And that's Fantastic Mr. Fox, of course, Wes Anderson. We've spoken about, either today or another podcast, we've spoken about most of the stuff that I like about it so much before. The main thing I think that has to get mentioned is, for me, because I was such a big fan of the Roald Dahl books when I was younger, to see it put on to the screen was a really big deal.
Beautiful.
And even when I was younger, I enjoyed it. Obviously then not aware it being a Wes Anderson film or of any of his other work, and I just enjoyed it for what it was then. But now being older, I can enjoy it as a piece of Wes Anderson film, who's, as I've said before, one of, if not my favourite director. One thing to mention just before we wrap up that hasn't been mentioned on previous podcasts, that's very relevant to the stuff we've been talking about today, is the score for this film is amazing. The score is so good. I don't even know really how to describe it, but it is very background, but it fits the tone so well. Very, I guess, quirky is quite a good way of describing it, and that very much fits the tone of Wes Anderson's filmmaking and the cinematography.
It was on your top 10 in our first podcast, top 10 films of all time.
Yeah, and it's one of my Desert Island films.
And now that I just want to ask, is there anything particular about that puts it at number 1 on the animated, as opposed to just being in this general discussion?
Yeah, I also, in terms of the animation itself, it's my favourite style of animation I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Wow.
In terms of the aesthetic, appeal to me personally, I can't see anything like above it in my personal opinion. Not just in terms of the stop motion, but like the colours on screen, the general like autumnal colours.
The warmth of the film is fantastic.
It's just fantastic. It's a great story as well, but that's what you get from Roald Dahl. They're all fantastic stories. Wes Anderson puts his own twist on it, adds in some elements that weren't necessarily in the book, but like the core of the book is still very true to the story.
That's the
core of the film. Sorry, is very true to the book. But obviously adapts it in a way that makes it suitable to the screen.
If anybody could do it,
Wes.
Yeah, fantastic.
But he does a great job. But I think we enough has been said on this film before.
I'm sorry.
But there's no. Mate, I spoke enough on it when it was in my top 10 generally. And Jamie's brought up today, which I'm really glad about, and there's no need to repeat ourselves.
It's
good. I think it's good having you guys talking at length about your favourite films, because that's variety to the podcast. The films we haven't talked about before. We've spoken about this one before, but yeah, that's my number 1.
Yeah, and so. it deserves as many shout-outs as it's gotten, because it's a wonderful piece of
genuinely a masterpiece.
I need to watch it.
I still can't believe we'll watch that soon, because I'd like to watch it. I'll watch that anytime. Literally.
The thing that always stands out to me is like the lateral kind of aspect of it.
Yeah,
like the sort of the closedness of the set, as it were. It being a set is kind of an arbitrary thought, because it's a constructed space, obviously.
Yeah.
But the lateral kind of aspect of it is just fantastic.
Yeah.
The way that they use that, and like you said, one thing that I didn't bring up before, but having heard you mention it, something that resonates definitely with me, like the warmth of the colours, like the way that they use that and then change that when they end up sort of underground, and you have this darkness
in the sewers,
stuff
and then under
in the sewers. It's so telling and so powerful, but very neatly done in the sense that it doesn't stick out to you immediately, perhaps, but it's very apparent when you take a moment to sit back and think about it.
And the cast is amazing.
Oh,
as Wes Anderson films always are. The cast is amazing.
Yeah, one thing we haven't spoken about very much is the voice acting of a lot of these
which
films,
is important, which is
a huge
important
element, and something that is incredibly.
George Clooney is amazing in this film.
Yeah,
as
fantastic.
Mr. Fox.
Absolutely fantastic.
Great. George Clooney is great.
He is brilliant. Glad that we had a chance to recognise that. Before
Bill Murray as well. Shout out Bill Murray.
Yeah, massive cast.
Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe's in
it.
Yeah,
Willem Dafoe.
They're all in it, mate. All in it.
He loves working with Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Wes Anderson. Yeah.
He loves
in
working
Grand
with
Budapest. Yeah,
he was
a serious character.
He actually, Grand Budapest Hotel has an incredible cast, an incredible story. Willem Dafoe.
Willem with an E.
Could well be
and DAF,
the standout. To be fair, I'd say in almost every film he's ever been in, he might be the standout. In Spider-Man,
as the Green Goblin.
As the Green Goblin.
I do love Tobey Maguire, but he is good as Green Goblin.
I mean, Willem Dafoe is just such an incredible actor. He's just so good.
Grand Budapest. Who's I can't think of his name. Who's the guy that he pursues around the?
Ralph Fiennes.
No. The who's in Thor Ragnarok. Who he pursues around the Grand Budapest Hotel. Just search. Go on here. Go on the characters. I can't think of his name now. It's really annoying me.
The guy who's in.
You'll know him. The
guy who's in Calm.
In what?
Adrian Brody.
Hang on. Keep going down.
Yeah,
Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, there's the scene where Willem Dafoe pursues Jeff Goldblum around the.
Jeff
I think
Goldblum
it's like is it a gallery or something like that? Or a museum.
Fantastic actor.
But yeah, great scene. Anyway, we won't go into Grand Budapest. We won't go into Grand Budapest. I think we need to. We should probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got time for Desert Island.
No, I'll have you on again, mate.
But yeah, you'll no doubt be on in the future, and we'll do your Desert Island then.
I'll be back.
Ladies, in my mind.
Ladies and gentlemen. Thank you if you've made it this far. Seriously, you guys.
I think this is the longest. Yeah.
I don't think.
Not a surprise.
I don't think.
That's what we got.
No surprise. And with the depth of content, I think it's perfectly valid. The fucking. Again, sorry for my French, but the goddamn wisdom bombs that Sir Jimbles King has been just unleashing in the studio. I think
a ribonculous man. Absolutely ribonculous man.
The intergalactic criminal himself. I personally have learnt a lot about things I'm very passionate about. New perspectives, some great new words, whatever the hell that word was, from the wordsmith, the great orator, Jamie King. Thank you for coming on our podcast.
Thank you for coming on, mate.
It was an absolute pleasure. I've had a whale of a time.
Pleasure having you, mate. Pleasure having you.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for having me. Made my bloody evening. I would damn well say. But yeah,
I'm glad to hear it, mate.
Fantastic to be on. I look forward to whenever I can next listen to or appear on the podcast.
You're never coming back on again, mate.
Am I never invited again? Good.
No.
God damn it.
Don't know about that.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Fantastic work you fellas are doing. Constructing the pod. I've enjoyed every episode I've heard. Shout out to, if you don't mind me plugging real quick, because you know we out here trying to get some plugs and that.
I don't know.
If you fancy, dear listeners, if you've got any interest in basketball, checking out the Full Court Flex blog or podcast. That is fullcourtflex.com, blog or podcast. Alternatively, if it ever gets released professionally, that's entirely fair and entirely legitimate.
No. We'll leave it.
The Crate Escape beer podcast. If you like your beer
thus far,
and you love your crates, yet to be released but might happen soon. The Crate Escape podcast coming soon.
We hope to be on that one.
Yeah, mate.
Maybe.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you'll make it.
Jamie, 3 last words for the Absolute Podcast fan base.
Just any 3?
Any 3 you fancy.
Sum up your thoughts.
I love an animation. Yeah!
Bravo. And on that note.
And
goodbye.
You got the bonus voice crack in there as well.
Yeah.
Lucky you guys. Not everybody gets to hear that.
That seems a good place.
Lucky you guys.
See ya.
See ya.